We're live, Gary.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Dublin Architectural Review Board meeting. I'd like to call our meeting to order. This is a virtual meeting of the City of Dublin Architectural Review Board. The Ohio Legislature passed several emergency laws to address the pandemic, including the ability for public entities to have virtual meetings. Over the last year, we have appreciated the ability to maintain our continuity of government. For the present time, we are holding our meetings online and live streaming those meetings on YouTube. You can access the live stream on the city's website. The meeting procedure for each case this evening will begin with a staff presentation, followed by an opportunity for the applicant to make a presentation. The board will then have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions prior to hearing public comments. Finally, the board will deliberate on each case. In order to submit any questions or comments regarding an item listed on this evening's agenda, please use the form under the streaming video on the city's website. These questions and comments will be relayed to the board by the meeting moderator. We want to accommodate public participation to the greatest extent possible and welcome your comments on the cases. Please use your valid name and address when submitting your comments and refrain from making any inappropriate comments. Let's see. All right. I do not see on the agenda the Pledge of Allegiance. Are we not doing the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? We normally start our meetings with that.
We are doing the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. All right. So could the flag be displayed? All right. If you join in, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one
nation, indivisible, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Okay. Thank you. Judy, would you go ahead with the roll call?
Yes. Ms. Cooper?
Here.
Ms. Cram?
Here.
Mr. Kanaki?
Here.
Mr. Cotter?
Here.
Mr. Alexander?
Here. Is there a motion to accept the documents into the record, the documents for tonight's meeting, and approve the meeting minutes from April 28th, 2021?
I can make the motion to approve the minutes and accept them.
Second.
Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
The Architectural Review Board is responsible for review of construction and modification or alteration to any site in the review district or area subject to architectural review under the provision of the Zoning Code Section 153.170. The board has a decision-making responsibility on these cases. A swearing in of anyone who intends to address the board on any of these cases is necessary. The agenda order is typically determined at the beginning of the meeting by the chair. The agenda has been published. There are no cases eligible for the consent agenda this evening. We will be following the agenda in the order that has been published. I'd like to swear in the witnesses. So anyone intending to address the board on cases this evening, please raise your right hand and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this board?
Yes. I do.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the cases. Our first case is an informal review. It is for 40 North High Street. The application is a request for an informal review and feedback for the consideration of preservation, rehabilitation, or demolition of a stone wall associated with a future application for development on a 0.21 acre site zoned Historic District, Historic Core. The site is east of North High Street, approximately 125 feet south of North Street. Ms. Martin will be our presenter. So Nicole, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Okay, good evening. As mentioned, this is a request for informal review and feedback for a site located on the east side of North High Street, approximately 0.2 acres in size. A bit of case history. This site was previously before the Architecture Review Board in January of this year. At the time, the board provided informal review on a concept for additional site development, including a second-story office addition, as well as a 2.5-story, 2-unit townhouse building. The informal review this evening is intended to provide feedback on a specific item that will influence future site planning, specifically the possibility of demolition and replacement of a stone wall with a modern wall, partial demolition and replacement of the stone wall, removal and reconstruction of the stone wall in an alternate or identical place, and then finally, potential preservation of the stone wall. So as we look at the existing site on our screen, you can see here in yellow the property lines as well as the existing structure in brown. The blue line indicates the existing stone wall that bisects the property north to south, which is approximately 70 feet in length. The wall returns east to west on the property immediately to the south, which is 32 North High Street. Following are some detailed photographs of the existing stone wall. You can see here in the upper picture the extent of the wall that's under consideration this evening. This stone wall is a dry-laid wall, which dates to the late 1800s or early 1900s. You can also see in this photo the historic stone privy. That outhouse was built in 1934. Some additional detailed photography of this wall. The south portion of the wall, which is located on the property to the south, is on the left-hand side of your screen, and the east portion of the wall, which extends to bisect 40 North High Street, is on the right-hand side of your screen. This wall was originally constructed with dry-laid pieces of stone assembled by a skilled mason. Over time, modifications have taken place, including the penetration of the wall with a sewer pipe. You'll also note in some of these photos a significant amount of vegetation that has penetrated the wall. These penetrations to the wall have resulted in modifications to the original design, which includes the addition of mortar. The addition of mortar has, in some cases, created a condition where the freeze-thaw cycle has trapped water behind the wall, leading to cracking and bowing of the wall, particularly at the southeast corner. Here are detailed photos of the north property line of 40 North High Street as it intersects the property to the north, and the wall return as it intersects the Cohatch building. Finally, this is a detailed photo of the stone privy. The privy is important to consider as we consider options for the existing stone wall, as the impact to the privy is likely should this wall be modified. So staff has proposed a number of discussion questions for the board's consideration. Does the board support demolition of the historic stone wall and construction of a modern retaining wall? Does the board support partial demolition of the stone wall to accommodate future development? Does the board support removal and rehabilitation of the stone wall in the same location or alternate locations? And finally, does the board support or recommend preservation of the stone wall? And of course, any other considerations by the board. With that, the applicant's representative is here this evening, as well as the applicant. I am happy to answer any questions from a staff perspective. Otherwise, I will turn it over to them. Thank you.
Any questions for Nikki? Okay, Dan, I see, Mr. Morgan, I see you're present. Are you going to make the presentation this evening?
I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize that I was still muted. I didn't realize I had that kind of control in this meeting. Thank you. Yes, I'd love to just talk with the board about this, gain some insight. And those 4 questions that Nikki so graciously pointed out, those are exactly what we need to feedback on so that we can move forward with the schematic design for developing the site further. Largely this wall is an internal site wall or landscaping feature more than it is a property boundary that is so more common in Dublin between adjacent parcels where you have the end of a property, the beginning of another property, or the demarcating a corner of an actual lot. This is really more of a landscape feature internal to the lot, much as an interior wall of a historic structure might be viewed, where it's the exterior, it's the whole rather than the minor details on the interior. We've consulted with a structural engineer from Corda Engineering, and that's where we just were able to kind of really examine the construction methods, the means and methods for actually building the wall, which allowed us to take a little bit more of a constructability standpoint of what it would take to dismantle the wall and reassemble the wall in the historic fashion, to kind of put pen to paper to see what the expense of that might be. So we have our hands around that. Largely, this wall in its current location, it's more creating more limitation to the site than benefit to the site. The current wall, with its previous construction methods, was made to actually weep water throughout the entire wall. It's a dry stack. Over time, possibly 80 years, 100 years, those pores have been tuck pointed or filled with mortar. Gravel that was behind the wall has washed out from the wall, which the soil is actually in some places done what's called liquefaction, where it gets wet, and then from the parking lot on top, it's pushing and it becomes more of a liquid than a solid, and it's actually creating bows and points along the wall. So it's creating concern on my part and Dr. Lapierre's part of the stability of the parking lot should the wall remain in its current state. Modern times, to retain for a wall, a landscape wall or retaining wall in this nature, where we're supporting a parking lot, it would have a true footing, it would have reinforcing, it would be potentially sheet piles, solid concrete. There are multiple methods to which we would do this today. So we'd prefer to either incorporate some level of retainage within the actual new building, or take this wall down, restructure it with modern construction methods, and then create it as a feature of the site. Trying to think if I have any other. Previously on other projects at the conceptual level, I think even under final ARB approval, we were dismantling site walls. I think we looked at a project where there's actually was a site wall demarcating one property to the next property. We were looking at doing a combined plan So that interior wall, we're looking at dismantling it and actually reconstructing it on site as site walls to kind of pay homage to the previous developments on the property. This, in my opinion, take that for what it's worth, is another opportunity where we could do something similar with this site wall. The stones on this site wall are unique. They're larger limestone rather than the smaller ledge stones, primarily at the bottom of the wall, and even some of the larger stones at the top of the wall, which have over the past 25 or 30 years actually have fallen off and are now buried under the silt on the downhill slope of the lot. With that, I don't know if there are more questions for me or for Nikki or for Dr. Lapierre. I believe he's on the call too.
Board members, do you have questions for Nikki or the applicants? I have one, and maybe this will warm everybody up.
It's tough being first.
If the project, if you were not developing the site in the manner you are, would the repair of the wall still need to be addressed in some fashion?
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else have any questions? Has there? Oh, go ahead, Marty.
I noticed that there was a lot of scrub vegetation there at the top of the wall. And I was wondering, had anything been looked at about what impact that was causing to the wall as far as just removing it to better preserve the wall?
And he walked away, probably thinking that was the end. See, Brooks don't roll like that. So, of course, when Brooks rolled out.
Just sorry to break in. Does somebody else hear other noise coming through, like there's a radio or something else going on in the background? Just to ask everybody else to check their mics.
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay,
Dan?
one second.
Yeah.
So Dan, I've muted you. I'm trying to manage whatever sound is coming out, so I've randomly muted people. So maybe we can just hit a reset. Everyone can mute themselves, then Gary can unmute himself, and we can move on. Okay, perfect.
Next thing you know, that winter, we get to the Hero World Challenge, and prices now is a little jacked up. And they put on 20, 30 more pounds than that. So the issue is, Bryson being called to play this, it's like the golf Batman kicked in his face, and decided to kick us. It's just like the protein shaking it up. And so now, even now, Brooks is exploding back.
Okay, so I have no idea because everyone's muted on here. So
Can we hear enough? Can everyone hear enough to proceed? I think everyone's committed their time
Okay. Yep.
to our meeting, so we should try to proceed, I think.
Sounds good. I'll kick in with a question. I'm not sure where we were on that.
Just a moment. Did Marty's question get answered?
Oh, Marty, that's right.
Marty, may I address the question regarding the vegetation? Can you hear me?
Marty, you got muted.
Sure, go ahead.
So when I bought the place back in 2001, along the south side of the wall, there was plants kind of from the or bushes or overgrown shrubs from the outhouse all the way east to the corner of the wall. The previous owner, I think before he sold it to Mr. Lombardi, had trimmed those back probably 2 or 3 years prior to selling it. And I'm pretty sure that the root base of those plants was part of the reason why the southern part of the wall collapsed. The reason why there's bushes on top or shrubs on top of the wall was I was told to placed something there by my insurance company to keep from getting or having people drive off the end of my driveway at nighttime. So that was done probably easily 15 years ago. There are just some arborvitaes that are growing along the eastern wall from the north to south of the wall that's bisecting my property. The rest of it is just there that I mean, I had it all maintained earlier this spring. But roots dying and then roots, then the water getting in and the heaving and the freezing and the fact that the wall's been there 100 years is part of the reason why it's the way it looks now. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the vegetation on how it's helped or hindered the strength of the wall over time.
Marty, does that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine for now.
Okay. All right, Frank, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Just trying to move forward on this. Have any conceptual ideas come about that would incorporate the wall, either to a full extent or a partial extent, anything of that nature? Since I know we're still in the informal part of the show, I didn't know if you thought about including it in your master plan.
We did. I don't know. A few months, last time it was in January, was the last time we came to the ARB with our initial site development plans. And we were at that time, we were talking about basically replacing the portion of the central portion of the wall and incorporating that into an actual basement foundation for the new structure on the east side of the lot. You can see it in this diagram. It's kind of a T-shaped structure with the leg of the T basically becoming that retaining wall. And that was the first kind of test of saying, well, maybe we can engage the wall and take out the part that's bowing and replace it and give the western lot more structure for the parking and for an addition onto the building, but also create space for habitable space. And I think out of that conversation with the ARB, that started us down the path of, well, if you have to take the wall, it's a historic wall, do we need to preserve it? And if we need to preserve it correctly, we really need to disassemble it and then reassemble it. And so the conversation, we said, well, if that's the way to do it, let's engage an engineer to see if that's the proper way to actually make this wall structurally sound for public safety. And that, in fact, is the way that wall would need to be shored up, is that it would need to basically the parking lot would be excavated, the stone wall would be taken down, they'd lay it up in lifts and then and come back at varying heights up the parking lot at different lifts, probably every 2 feet or so, with filter fabric and gravel. I think it was somewhere around 60 tons of gravel. So there's no actual soil against the wall, and it's just clean draining soil. Gravel up against that wall and laying up that wall back in lifts to its height. And even at that point, it would still be more of a landscape wall, more so than an actual retainage wall that you'd use for structure, meaning the structure for any addition onto the existing building on the west portion of the lot would likely have to have deep foundations and not count on the structure of this wall for any structural stability. So that led us to this conversation we're having today well, we're going to develop this site. We know we want to expand the existing building, and we want to build a secondary use at the Blacksmith Alley elevation, more of a pedestrian, to kind of play between the scales of Bridge Street and the scales of Riverview neighborhood. So let's determine what we can do with this wall, and then really start down that path of designing a building in kind of in lockstep with the ARB to make sure that we're meeting the city's goals and able to achieve our goals. So we're just continuing the dialogue. Does that answer your question?
Yep, great.
Amy, Sean, do you have any general questions before we?
I have no questions.
I don't have any questions. I have more of a discussion than this amongst us and then questions.
Yeah.
I'll ask then one last question of the applicant. It looks like your scheme was developed to minimize particularly what you're doing on the High Street side, minimize loading on the wall in the future. Noticed you've held the parking back. Also, by cantilevering the second floor out, you've kept the loads from the building back as far as possible from the wall. So it looks like, with the exception of the work on Blacksmith Lane, possibly engaging the wall, it looks like you're trying to essentially preserve the wall with the way you're developing the site, or at least reduce the loads on the wall. I think you're still muted.
Correct. So the thought in noting that the wall has been there a long time, it has some value, that this initial concept, that's what kind of bore the idea of this more of a T-shaped concept where we're coming in, engaging part of it, and also at the southern end where the stone wall comes off of our property and continues on to 32. That corner of the wall it needs to be addressed. It's Dr. LaPierre has actually spoken with the property owner of 32. I don't know if he's engaged the city yet or not with his plans for that property. But we know that's not our wall. We need to consult with them to say, hey, you have a wall that's retaining part of our property, and ultimately it's retaining about 30 square feet of your property and the ground below your outhouse. So our intent was to leave as much of that part of the wall alone, so that it does not impact the neighboring property. And again, the same on the north end, which is right now, that's right up against the Cohatch project. So that's a little bit of wall that you really wouldn't see, except for maybe some windows from the apartment building, looking into maybe a potential private little outdoor courtyard in that space, which might be a nice place to hang out or have a barbecue, or an accessible place to not just collect trash. That's the goal.
Nikki, have we had any public comment?
We've not had any public comment on this application.
Okay. Then it's our turn, board members, to talk a little bit and try to address some of the questions that have been brought before us. First question being, do we support the demolition of the stone wall? And then there are different degrees. Do we support the demolition, construction of a modern retaining wall, partial demolition, demolition and rebuilding, preservation? I know the consultant in her report is advocating some sort of preservation of the wall in place. General feelings on these.
I can jump in, I guess. For me, if I look at this, so looking at I'll talk about the engineering report. So certainly there's some things I think Mr. Morgan was talking about. Certainly there's some things that look to be structurally unsound that are going to have to be fixed in some way. Okay, some of it maybe is on the other property, but certainly first, I wouldn't support demoing the wall, right? I think I think somehow, like we said in the last meeting, we have to find a way to incorporate the wall. And I'm also not in favor of, putting it someplace else, right? Taking it down, putting it someplace else. So I'm more kind of in the middle of saying, how can we, to me, it looking at the design and going and looking at somehow taking it down and putting it back up in some way, because certainly from a structural standpoint, it looks challenging to rehab it in place. Certainly, I'm not a stonemason, but that looks like it would have some challenges there. So my first thing, certainly for number one, I don't think taking the wall down and putting a modern retaining wall in is the appropriate thing in my opinion. but it needs to be rehabilitated. Now, how exactly that's done, I'm not sure. Maybe an architect would have a little better view of that. But how can we integrate that into the new building and use either rebuild it or find a way to integrate it in? But I think taking it down, no, but rehabilitating it in place, yes. First
Okay.
thoughts.
Anybody else?
Sure, I could jump in. I think also if Nikki Martin would put on the list, the numbered list, that I was thinking we could be a combination of 3 and 4, if anything. When I was looking at those, it's not, 3 and 4, I think could actually be a hybrid together, be a support, a recommendation of preservation with rehabilitating the wall where it needs to be. Because I mean, I'm not an engineer either, but looking at it, you can tell there's parts that just seem to be structurally unsound and it would have to be addressed. But not moving the wall, basically keeping it in the same location. So the same as was just said before me.
Thanks, Frank.
I can
Amy,
get,
Mary?
I'm in the same boat. I disagree. I can't support demolition of it. True preservation isn't really a possibility just because there's so many structural problems with it. But as Frank said, it's kind of going to be a combination. We certainly would preserve all of the materials that we could use. We want to use all of the existing stone we can. We might lose some of it that's had too much mortar or cracks by the time you take the wall down. But I think they can rebuild it structurally. I also think since you're going to have to excavate the parking lot above the part that is retaining, like as you said, mentioned, put gravel in there and do that. I think there might be an opportunity to bury some type of other type of structural support, perhaps in the center of that parking lot that could be help use to support the cantilever that they're planning. It might be able to take some type of, I'm not a structural engineer, but it might be able to take some of the structural load off of anything that would be on this wall. Because you certainly can't rehabilitate and preserve this wall to be structurally sound. It's not going to hold more weight. It will hold your existing parking lot. It will be safe. But you're still going to need to remedy that second floor cantilever where you're putting that weight. So yeah, combination of 3 and 4, leaving it in place where it is, fixing it as needed. And just as a side note, I mean, I do tours for the Historical Society, and the privy in this wall are always on the tour. It's the only thing in the entire historic district that's like it. It's the only place we have a wall like this. So it's certainly a feature that needs to be saved.
Thanks, Amy. Marty? Marty, are you there?
I'm here. I would concur with Amy's comments, and I don't really have anything to add to either Amy or Sean's comments at this time.
Okay. I agree generally also with the comments that were made. I think both reports that we were given as a part of this application were very good. I think your engineering consultant explained very clearly what the problems were. We can see the problems on the site. I think it's clear. My sense is the one option that he outlined where the wall has to come down and then you rebuild the wall in place. I have a feeling that's what's going to be needed. And but I think our historical consultant also pointed out the significance of this to the community. And it is, I don't think there's any wall like it anyplace else in the community. So, and I think your scheme potentially goes a long way to reducing the loads on the wall. Just by the way you've cantilevered the second floor, held the parking back, and the work on Blacksmith Lane. And and this, for what it's worth, you may not like this suggestion. If that portion that's of the condominiums that's engaging the wall was actually moved off the wall And instead of setting the second story back on Blacksmith Lane, you put the square footage on top of the garages. I mean, that could be the drama of the lateral view of that wall could be retained across the back of those units, and the units and the work up at High Street would be structurally independent of the wall. So it seems like there's a way that you can get all the square footage and everything you want on the site, and keep that wall. And I also think that, and that was part of my initial question, you would need to repair this wall anyways. So you have those costs regardless of whether you go forward with the project. The revenue generated by the project makes it easier to repair the wall. But in general terms, I'm in agreement with 3 and 4, the hybrid that the other board members were supporting in 3 and 4. Are there any other additional comments?
Only for me, just I think, Mr. Morgan, when you were talking about how you could have that open space between the wall, and just as Mr. Alexander said, I think it would make a visually interesting thing. And then when you put the foundation in for the new building, you could put concrete under the wall. I mean, I think there's a good way to keep the thing so that the wall isn't retaining really anything, but it's there for a visual appearance. And certainly, I guess you'll come back for another informal review, but I think, as Gary said, that could be certainly interesting and preserve the wall for the future.
But I just want to be clear. It's not necessarily the vertical load that we're worried about the wall supporting on top of the wall. It's the hydrostatic pressure from the land pushing horizontally on the wall, which is causing it to bow and buckle. This dry stacked wall is not, from the structural engineering report, a dry laid stack wall would not be designed today to support any kind of loads that you'd be building downhill from, which is why we're trying to shore the wall up with new construction where we're proposing the new building. I would say, I think he mentioned in his report, building downslope from the wall is not advisable. Which I guess from what I'm hearing from you guys, it seems you'd prefer us to take the wall down, put it back up, then keep any kind of new development away from said wall. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think everybody wants in some way to, we're not going to tell you how to preserve it because we're not in that field, but to preserve the wall however a specialist sees best, right? And then, you can incorporate it. It could be an architectural feature of your final product, something of that nature. But at the end of the day, the wall still has to remain in one fashion or another in that spot and look as closely as it did to what it was, if that makes sense.
And I don't want to be the one who makes the leading comment, because I was the only one who suggested at the Blacksmith Lane that they remove the structure, the new structure that's in contact with the wall. I don't know how, and I added that. So I think the rest of you should answer Mr. Morgan's question about not engaging the wall at all at the lower level, because I brought that up. The rest of you mentioned 3 and 4, but maybe you don't feel as strongly about not touching the wall with the new construction down below.
I agree with Gary. I didn't like when the original proposal, that was the portion I didn't like, when it was butting up against the wall and you were using it as a wall. I'd prefer it separated out and you could still see the wall. That's my preference.
And I'm the same. Just, I mean, if we cover it up, it's going to be lost.
So can I just ask a follow-up question to that?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a Cohatch has cut half the wall off to the north and they're building right up against it. So you can't see it from the north. Will you prevent a future development to the lot to the south ever from happening that would block public view of this wall? Meaning that nobody would, are you going to protect that southeast corner of the property?
I
This
would
wall that we're going to spend over $150,000 to rebuild?
A future applicant who comes, and if it has to deal with the wall, they will have to go through the same exact process that you're going through and be asked the same exact questions. So we don't know who's on the board then and how they view it, but they have to go through the same exact process.
And they will have an issue. That wall is, as you know, is going to restrict them and how close they build on that, to the south of that wall. So it will impact, preserving that wall is certainly going to impact what's done on that property and preserving that privy.
I have a question, just may seem obvious, but if I build something that's away from the wall, who's going to see the wall if there's something built right in front of it? Does it matter to the board, or is it just because of the significance of the wall? If that was ever torn down, the wall was still there? I mean, no one's going to see the wall.
Well, that would be part of what we would be looking at when you bring a site plan. We look at the way buildings are laid out on the site. And my preference would be that the public and the people coming down those alleys and stuff, people would still be able to see the wall.
So then there would be nothing in front of the wall at all, meaning nothing to be built there. How can you see it? Because the only place you would be able to see it is if you were standing south, looking north, looking behind anything that was built to the east of the wall. And you would see, let's say we built 5 feet away from it, you would have a 5-foot alleyway between the back of my building, the end of my parking lot, and then the wall would still be there. You'd have to kind of look around the corner of the back of the building to see it.
Yeah, I'd have to see a site plan. I mean,
It's
It makes sense.
difficult.
The building in front of it would be blocking the wall. Correct?
Well, and we're not limiting your ability to build in front of it. I understand your point. And until we see an application from the south for something on the south, we can't necessarily address if they're going to block it or not. But the other thing to keep in mind from our point of view is this is an important archaeological feature for the community. Some historic districts, you have to build a building around an important archaeological feature. And it's a legitimate practice to maintain that feature that's unique to the community. And that's really the mission of our board, to preserve the history of the community. And that's what we're trying to do here. And that's what all these comments are about. Now, how you rebuild that wall, if you decide Mr. Morgan's comment about, it's not good to put loads on the dry laid wall. Well, we're not saying it has to be dry laid. Maybe there's more structure behind it than just the gravel. And then you have more engineering to offset the weaknesses of the dry laid wall and deal with some of the surcharges Mr. Morgan was talking about. Okay, but we are giving you, unlike the consultant whose recommendation, we are giving you the option. We're not giving, well, you can take the wall down if you rebuild it.
So, Mr. Alexander, we could take it down, put a structurally sound, for lack of just a concrete supporting wall, and then we could use this as a veneer stone and stack it up right in front of it.
I think that's a question I think that's a fair question, and I think I'd like to hear how the other board members feel about that. Does it need to function as a dry laid wall if it's rebuilt?
I think it needs to function to some extent. There's leeway. You don't have to rebuild it exactly. You can change slightly the design. Can you put a concrete block wall and then just dry lay some stone in front of it? I don't think that's going to work.
Why wouldn't that work?
But I'd have to see the plans. I'd have to see the drawing. I mean, it needs, if you're going to do any type of restoration, there's a difference between rehabilitation and restoration.
Well, I mean,
And
it's similar
it depends
to,
on the extent of change.
it's
so
similar
it-
to like an old stone building where if or a stone wall, you come out and they catalog it, they mark it with chalk, they disassemble it. Well, they mark it with chalk, they take a photograph of it and they put it back together like a puzzle piece. So it looks exactly the way it looked when it was initially
Yeah,
erected.
if it's possible to rebuild the wall in front of it and it still has that same design, but functions structurally different, that's okay. That might be okay.
And I would tend to agree. I would be fully in favor if you can put it back up and it has the form and the 6 or 7 things that make it important to the community. How you hold the, to be quiet, for me, how you hold the parking lot up is for me is more irrelevant. I mean, it's relevant because you got to hold it up. But for me, I'd be in favor if you said, "Hey, I'm trying to preserve all this as it being the leach bed for the upper part." Because that's the thing that's causing some of the structural issues. If we find a different way, I actually I could be okay with if you did that a different way. So you didn't have to rely on that dry laid wall to load.
So basically the piece we're losing is integrity of design. You're changing how it's designed, the structure of it. But if we can keep integrity of materials and workmanship, which is really important because it was this was one of the key masons and locally quarried rock. If we keep those are more important aspects of integrity. So we can still, there's leeway in there, but that's all, you would have to get quotes and find out how much it would cost you, and if you can find a mason to do that work, and would the rebuilt structure be stable sitting in front of something else? I mean, you have a lot, there's a lot of questions.
There are only a handful of masons that could do this type of work.
Yeah.
And we looked at some early on estimates of taking the wall down and laying it back up, and that's where that $115,000 quote ballpark number came from. So getting comfortable with that kind of money in the tear down and rebuilding of this wall, or the refurbishment of this wall came from. So those aren't just made up figures. So it's a significant element. It's a significant project cost maintaining this wall.
It's like 1/10 of the budget to do the project.
So,
Frank, Marty, do you have anything additionally to add?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Oh.
Amy said it.
Yeah, I'm
And
bored on these comments. I don't have anything additional.
and I would be comfortable. I would share the position that Amy and Sean have stated, in that if there's another structural system behind that does the structural work and the look of this wall as a dry laid stone wall is preserved, then I would be certainly fine with rebuilding it in that manner.
in its current place.
In its current place, yes.
And uninterrupted. I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear on this.
I think all the board members have responded affirmatively that they would like to see it uninterrupted.
Okay.
How much space, if I may ask, do you, as the board, need to have in front of this wall to be happy with it? I mean, does it have to be 3 feet away, 2 feet away, 5 feet away, 10 feet
It's not,
away?
to me, it's not a set number. It's the overall site plan. It's not, it's just how it's incorporated into the site.
Well, from what I'm listening to, my understanding is that you don't want anything interrupted, and you want it to look exactly like it does. And you want it fixed at whatever cost it's gonna cost, which is exorbitant in my opinion. But to have it not, you know, I mean, I'm still lost at the point of having it there and not being able to see if there's a building in front of it. But I appreciate your comments, and we can kind of come back to it, I guess, but that's where my head is, I guess.
As we're talking about developing a site plan for this property, I think it'd be helpful if there was, if we were within 3 feet of the wall, would that be acceptable? If we were within 5 feet, if it'd be helpful to have that kind of limitation, because the wall in its current space, we engaged it not because we engaged it because we had to, in order to get parking get some cars parked in there for the development, and have room to get in and get out of the garage, and have a way upstairs out of the parking. So it'd be helpful for us as we're moving forward, is kind of set up a tolerance of how close is too close, far down the building to what we have on this, because we have to make the plan work. So
In my personal opinion, the farthest away you can get, the best, because then people can actually see the wall and take advantage of it. And if something happens, you can get back there and fix it. I mean, you need space to work on it. I mean, things are going to happen. You have to have access to it.
Three feet or 2 feet or 5 feet, what would you do with the space? What would, I mean, just think outside the box of what would the space be used for? Yeah. Could you put some chairs out there? What could be done back there if you had some space?
If it were 3 feet, it'd be windows.
Yeah.
Like a window well, getting some
Yep.
fresh air into the unit. If it were 5 feet, maybe you could hang out there. But
Well, it seems like 2 of the units you were actually using it as exterior space, right?
this is only a 2. Well, that was our initial proposal to try to. This is only a 2 unit.
But you
walk
did.
up, and we pulled that away in order to try to preserve portions of the wall so that it would be visible from the people cruising down Blacksmith Alley, and also looking back from the unit. Give this construction a bit more of a unique architecture.
I have a question real quick. Do you guys mind at what easterly or westerly position the wall is placed? Does it have to be, because I mean, the wall's coming down. Can I put the wall 3 feet more into my existing parking lot and just build the wall? It's only 3 feet more to the west than it was to the east. It looks exactly the same stone, same design, but it's just pushed back into my parking lot 3 feet.
But
Does it make sense?
yes, but the
Yes.
question
The
is,
wall just move it back.
you had mentioned that you weren't moving the wall or doing anything on the property to the south.
Nope.
So you can't change the corner angle. You can't move your portion of the wall 3 feet back and then have that corner stick out 3 feet.
That whole corner has to come down. It's broken. It's gonna
But
have
I'm
to be
saying,
completely
you said you
rehabilitated
weren't
anyway.
working on that piece and it will join. The problem is you have,
So the length of the southern wall has to stay the same, is what
it
you're
has to
saying.
match what the rest of the wall that's there. Yes.
Well, I want to make the clarification. So we have reached out and talked to the property owner to the south, and made mention to him that his wall is in significant disrepair. So I would think that regardless of what we do, whether we rebuild the wall on our property, it's going to affect that portion of the wall. Otherwise, it's a fool's errand to try to start remedying this wall piece by piece. So I think what Dr. Lapierre is saying is, well, can that corner, in conjunction with the neighbor to the south, conceptually, could we work together in tandem with him and actually move that corner back 3 feet, giving the wall more breathing space and more daylight, and giving the development a little bit more breathing space, so we don't have to shoehorn the two things together. Of course, it'd have to be in conjunction with the property owner to the south.
I think your question is, if I may comment, your question's a good question for the board to consider if we had plans that kind of showed that, and of course, the other adjacent property owner. But I do want to note for the board and for everyone's consideration that on the north end of the wall, it does cut in a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe like 3 feet, how it kind of edges out. next to the property on the north. So it would then become like a perfectly straight wall.
Did, I want to respond, but I want other board members to respond too, to the, because I understand your point, Marty, is if we did allow the whole wall to move back, then potentially it's lining up with that jog that's at the north. So the wall is straight. I think some latitude, personally, I would be willing, if the wall is going to be rebuilt, to grant some latitude and shift the wall back, assuming you have the agreement with the adjacent property owner to do that, and there's that continuity across there. I don't know how.
7:30. Oh, maybe I should just not eat.
I don't know how the others you feel. I just want to give Mr. Morgan some feedback on that.
Gary, I have to, because you're going to have to take that whole corner down anyways. I mean, and it's all the way almost to the privy. It's not quite that far. So I agree with Mr. Alexander. I could be with a nice plan and a way to go forward with the agreement of the south property owner. I think there's some leeway in there if that still gives you the parking structure above that you're still looking for. I think that's not a bad way to go forward, because I mean, we're going to change its character in some ways anyway, and you might accomplish both things. I could be in favor if you had for that.
I would concur.
Me also.
Amy, from a historian's point of view, what do you think about that?
I don't like it, but I might be able to. I don't like it because it changes the location and the design more, but I would be willing to look at plans and seeing how it was done.
Okay, all right.
But I think we've spent an hour on this case almost now. We've got a big agenda, so maybe we've answered all of his, I don't know if we've answered all of his questions.
I want to, I mean, I want to be fair. Mr. Morgan, Dr. LaPierre, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that I'm fine. I think we're good. I appreciate your time, everybody, tonight. And I think the next thing is to kind of get a site plan so that you guys can understand and incorporating the ARB's comments to try to have that compromise between historic preservation and trying to move forward with building something. So that's the next step, I think. So I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Move on to our second case. This is the James Davis residence at 5707 Dublin Road. This is a minor project review. This application is a request for the installation of replacement windows and a new entry door for an outlying historic property on the 0.7 acre site zoned planned unit development, Llewellyn Farms. The site is located approximately 300 feet north of the intersection of Dublin Road with Hertford Lane. Mr. Ridge will be our presenter. Chase, I will give you a moment, but whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you all see this okay?
Yeah.
Great. So as was mentioned, this is a request for review and approval of minor project review for the installation of new windows and doors at the property located at 5707 Dublin Road. The approximately 3/4 acre site is highlighted in yellow on your screen. It is situated west of Dublin Road, north of the intersection with Hertford Lane. The site is a bit unique compared to most properties under the purview of the ARB, as it is zoned Planned Unit Development District, Llewellyn Farms. The property does sit outside of the historic district, but is within the Architectural Review Board district and under the purview of the ARB. The property is listed additionally on Appendix G, which indicates its purview under the ARB. The zoomed in version of the same aerial gives you a bit more context to the site. So the site today contains an existing 2-story single-family stone masonry home with a rectilinear footprint. Additionally, there is a detached structure to the rear of the primary structure. For a bit of additional background, the home was constructed circa 1840. However, did experience a major fire in the 1970s, and subsequently all windows and doors were replaced in 1974. The windows and doors were replaced with single pane wood sash windows, which obviously were not or are not original to the home. Additionally, this home is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The applicant did provide an assessment of the windows and doors on the home for the board's consideration. So what you see here are some of the photos provided by the applicant of those existing conditions. You'll notice these are actually all 4 photos of the doors. And additionally, they provided photos of the window conditions as well. The assessment does note significant rotting, delamination, and additionally inoperability of some of the windows on the home. So the applicant is proposing to replace the windows and doors. The windows are to be replaced with 6/6 aluminum clad double hung windows, stone white finish. Staff is recommending that the applicant select a Cascade blue color provided by the manufacturer to retain the character of the home and ensure adequate contrast between the windows and the stone masonry. Additionally, staff is recommending that all trim and shutters be repainted to match the new windows and doors. In addition to the new windows, the applicant is proposing a new main entry, side and rear doors, and with the new main entry would be side lights and transom as well. So with that, this was reviewed against all applicable criteria. Staff is recommending approval of the minor project review this evening with 3 conditions. The first being that the applicant work with staff to choose an appropriate color, specifically the Cascade blue color provided by Marvin for the windows and doors. Number 2, that the applicant repaint all trim and shutters to match the window and doors. And then 3, that the side lights on either side of the front entry door be revised to match the size and pattern that exists today, subject to staff approval. So with that, the applicant and applicant's representative are in attendance this evening, and I am happy to answer any questions you all may have as well. Thank you.
Yes, Nicole, am I live?
Could you identify yourself?
My name is David Rippey from Dublin Design.
Okay. Mr. Rippey, do you have anything to add to the presentation?
I do. I'd like to thank the City of Dublin Economic Development and Architectural Review Board for the opportunity to review this process. As noted, my client has requested actually white for the window sash openings on 5707 Dublin Street. In consideration, I have some photos that are more historical, I believe, in nature, and I would like to see if I can share screen. I'm going to do that right now. Hopefully people are seeing my shared screen. It's connecting, I'm sorry.
Just from a meeting management perspective, typically we don't introduce new material at the meeting because the board's not had an opportunity to review it.
Sure, I
and
understand.
therefore they can't necessarily be expected to respond to it. We can defer to the chair if you'd like to entertain new material being presented. I just wanted to provide that context.
Well, the point I'm trying to make, if I may interject, is that historically, white is more appropriate for this circuit of 1800s. The blue-gray is unusual in its respect back in the 1800 vintage. And also my concern with introducing the blue-gray color that staff is suggesting is that this is a Kynar finished aluminum clad window, and that this window is produced, the color is produced in the factory, and it's like a automotive type of product finish, and it would be very difficult to alter the color. So committing to the federal blue-gray color when it doesn't match the historical value of the house, and I had several houses, and I'm sure you've seen them over and over and over again because they are in the Historical Society's memories, all represent white sash windows with black shutters and black trim, as does the only photo that I've been able to find of this building prior to 1974 also showed a white sash with a black shutter and black trim. So my question would be is, do we want to go with the 1974 blue-gray, or do we want to consider the white historic value of what was more of the circuit that we're talking about?
Okay, Mr. Rippey, I'm going to ask the board members here, since we have not seen this information prior to the meeting, and we have the staff's input on the color. I'm going to ask the board members if they want to table this request on the color until it's presented. We have an opportunity to review it and get staff's feedback on it.
Actually, I'll speak because I have my only comment on this was I don't think we should regulate that color. I disagreed respectfully with staff on that, and I prefer the white. As you mentioned, it is more historically accurate, and I prefer the white. So that was my only comment, was to remove that anyway. So
well, that's helpful. I was asking a kind of procedural question. It sounds like you feel like that's something that we can address when we have our general discussion. Okay. Everybody else?
I would agree. I don't need to see the pictures. I'm looking at the ones that we have in our book. Okay. So I don't need to see the white myself.
All right. So before we get to that point, I want to see if there are any other questions for Chase or for the applicant.
No.
Okay, I have a couple questions. What are who's the manufacturer? We know who the manufacturer of the windows, but I could not find in a cut sheet or documentation of what the doors and side lights are going to be made of. Who's the manufacturer? Is that documented, and has that been presented someplace?
David, please feel free to jump in if you have any clarifying points. It was staff's understanding that the manufacturer was Marvin, and that these were also, those components were extruded aluminum.
That is correct. The side lights and transom of the door would be a Marvin product. Marvin does not produce entry doors, so that would be a solid wood painted to match.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm glad you pointed that out. And then the question I would have for Chase is, how did you come up with the colors that were recommended?
So largely, staff's recommendation came from ensuring retaining the existing character of the home. And so the white did not seem, without seeing this, did not seem to contrast enough with the stone masonry. And so that's why the blue was kind of recommended to be retained.
Okay. All right.
I actually had one question there. So what color is the trim? So you have the trim around the windows, doors, and you also have some brackets under the eaves. What color will those be painted?
Presently, they are the federal blue gray, and I refer to it as a generic color blue gray, but that is what would be retained.
Okay.
Yes.
And the shutters as well?
Yes, correct.
So you're going to retain the blue on everything, and then just the windows, what you're replacing will be white.
Just the window sashes themselves, the light structure is going to be white. Yes, correct.
Did you also say the shutters were going to be painted at one point? I thought you said white.
They
with
are
the black shutter.
they presently are now. There's historical photos that show them as potentially black. It's a very vague photo, but presently they're now the current color, which I'm calling blue gray.
And your intention is to keep them that color?
That is correct.
Okay.
Chase, could you put up the photograph again of the front elevation, or maybe Nikki, maybe you're running the managing the meeting, but if you could put that up so we can look at all the surfaces and just make sure we're all clear on what is going to be what particular color. Okay.
So the brackets under the eaves, the shutters, and the trim around the door itself and all the trim, those are all going to remain the color that they are now.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's just the window sashes that will be white.
That's correct. As I understand it from my applicant, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And are the side lights going to be white and the door blue?
No, my understanding is that just the window sashes are to be white.
Okay.
And we'll always have the opportunity to alter the door because it will be a wood structure as opposed to aluminum clad.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
So
Chase-
if I could clarify, is the wood door then just going to be a natural wood, or is it also going to be painted?
It will be painted, yes.
So you'll match the
But-
existing blue.
No, that my understanding is that will be as white as well.
The door will be white. The side
Yes.
lights will be blue.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Before we continue our discussion, I think we're going to have a few. Is there any public comment? Has there been any public comment submitted on this?
There's been no public comment submitted on this application.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I think these so let's put up our conversation points again, Chase. Okay. Before we get to these, I want to clarify. So the door is going to be a different color from the side lights, from what you said.
And I stand corrected. I apologize. No, the door, the side lights will also be white as well to match the window configuration.
Okay. And the
And I
shutters.
apologize.
Okay.
Shutters will be blue. Any external trim potentially could be blue as well. There's usually a 1x border around the window opening that encases the window. That as well could be blue.
So you're talking about the brick mold.
Yes, correct. It's
So the
usually, it looks like a 1x at this point, but yes, a brick mold would
So the
be
brick-
appropriate.
Okay. So the brick mold will be blue, matching the shutter. Okay.
Correct.
So, all right. So that completely changes these conditions. So, first of all, we've heard what's proposed. How do the board members feel about we have windows and doors being replaced and the color scheme.
As I already said, I think I am totally okay with the white windows. I believe the door and the side lights, because you have the way that if you're matching the current configuration, you have a solid wood panel at the bottom, and then you have 3 lights on each side. So you have on your side lights.
Correct.
I think that wood panel, like that, all that wood trim and wood panel and wood door all need to be the same blue as your shutters and your trim and everything else.
I would concede to that, yes.
So I think that all needs to be blue.
Okay.
Or they exist, whatever we're calling the match existing shutter blue trim. And then
Right.
so that would be my preference. And then the windows can be white. So you can keep your brackets under the eaves, your trim around the windows, your shutters, all of that. You can keep the existing blue, gray, whatever you're calling it.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
Juan, Frank, Marty, how do you feel?
Nope, I agree with Amy. She said it.
And I'm okay with the white, for me, the white windows. The doors, I'm still, because I'm trying to go through as we look at the houses that are out there in the architectural style, looking federal, but it looks like the doors are different color. You have kind of white around the outside potentially, and then the door being a different color. I'm just trying to make sure it somehow matches things that we have already in the, maybe Amy, you can help me a little bit here.
Well, the reason I'm suggesting the side lights door, all of it to stay the blue as is, because it will look odd if you're contrasting the white and the blue in that close of proximity. It's going to just look odd. So that's why I'm suggesting that we keep the door blue to match everything. I don't know that that's the historically correct answer.
Yeah.
I just
Well, I would defer
with what they have. That was my suggestion.
I would defer to the Samuel Davis house in its present condition, which shows the entry white as well as the windows white. Now, it doesn't have any contrasting color, so that may not be a good comparison. But
where is that house? Sorry.
That is also on Dublin Road. And once again, if I could share a screen, I could share that with you. But and I could provide that information to you.
Because you and Amy have just said different things. You have proposed, with my last clarifying question, that the door and the side lights, everything in that area is white to match what's going on at the windows. Then Amy has proposed now that the door and the side lights and everything within the entry area be blue, but the windows stay white. As proposed. So,
you're muted, Amy.
What is there to stay white if on the transom? There's nothing that is to stay white. I mean, what
I was stating is earlier he said that whole assembly, everything in that entry would be white. And then and that's when I asked him the question, he said that all that will be white, just like the windows. And then your suggestion is that all of that's blue. Okay. Are we all okay with the windows being white? Let's.
Yes.
Is everybody okay with the windows being white?
Yes,
I am.
am.
The windows being white. I guess I'm confused as how the assembly is going together with the doors and the side lights with your product that you're purchasing. I want to make sure it's all one color.
Right. I understand.
Don't want 2 colors. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
I fully agree. Originally, I was assuming that the front entry would be entirely white, for the exception of the external shutters, which would be blue on flanking both sides of the entry, as they are flanking all the windows.
You also have trim on that door is recessed almost 2 feet.
Yes, that's mostly stone. It's 22 inches of cut stone.
Yeah, you have 2 feet. It's recessed 2 feet. So you also have 2 feet of trim there that needs to be the same color.
Yeah, but I believe that is stone. It's not.
No.
It's not actually trim.
I'm looking at the photo.
Looks like trim.
It's recessed in trim.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Let me make a suggestion. I think we're all in agreement with the windows, white. And I think we're all shaking our heads, at least, I can't see you, Frank, but hopefully you're there. You're there.
Yeah, I am. So I was just looking at the house picture again at the same
That's
time.
okay. That's okay. I think we're all in agreement that everything in the entry assembly should be the same color.
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
sure. I'm still, because there's certain houses on, what is it, 63 South High and 60 that are, the door and the transoms are different colors. I'm just trying to make sure I just want to make sure we're in the right place. I'm not sure I disagree, but I'm looking at the ones that are here that I see the pictures of. But I mean, if the applicant wants to have it one color, I'm okay with that. But I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
I would say keep it all one color, whether it's all
Yeah.
white or all the same blue. I don't really care. Just keep it all one color.
But the question for if that's okay, it's okay. But the question for me is that I see several that we've trimmed it in one color and the door is a different color.
We did, and,
Yeah.
and the one little building we went by last week is a good example of that.
Mhm.
I think in this case, for continuity across the entry, I see the benefit of making it all one color, and so I think that might be beneficial here. But because what I was going to propose is if we're all in agreement with the window, if the majority of us are in agreement with one of those two colors completely doing the entryway, we vote on that and let the applicant work with the staff to determine what that color is at the entryway.
I'm good with that.
I'm okay with that.
I would agree.
I'm in agreement as well.
Okay, all right. Okay, Chase, do you have to rewrite the conditions for us to have a motion?
I'll make the motion to have the rewritten of the conditions and so on.
What are the conditions though?
I'm working on rewriting those now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he has to go at him.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it's a discretionary call as to what would be the best appropriate color for the entryway to work with the windows in this scenario. Is that how I understand it?
I think we're comfortable with two options. I don't think we want to say discretionary. I think we've seen two options that we could agree with. We are in agreement with the white that you're proposing and the blue that we've seen, and so we understand those two colors. I think, and then we're saying you work with the staff to determine which is best, because that needs to be documented. I don't think we're completely leaving it open to other options, unless other board members feel we should build that flexibility in.
I understand.
Okay, so let me go ahead and share what I've got, and please do feel free to chime in if this needs edited. But since we're okay with the white windows, that condition has been removed altogether. The side lights condition remains, and then I've added that the entirety of the entryway be one color subject to staff approval.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's it. I can think of.
And then Chase, can you please add a condition that provides the applicant will provide an as approved plan, a complete as approved plan to staff for our records?
All right, is there a motion to move forward to approve this?
With these conditions, I can make the motion to move forward.
Okay,
A second.
Mr. Cotter,
I'm sorry. may I say, or may I get a clarifying thing? I got a little confused at the end there. With the staff approval, could it actually be a blue trim house with a white door and side lights and the white windows? Or are we saying, that's all? Because it says that the entirety of the entryway be one color subject to staff approval. And I'm just clarifying that the two choices are either white or blue, but that either of those would be approvable with the complete as approved plan to the staff.
I think adding that is a good idea.
Sure.
I was concerned that perhaps sage green or Coke was going to enter the picture.
Okay, and so to clarify, it's either the stone white to match the windows or the blue to match the existing conditions.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I hate to do this, but just for the record and the clarity's sake, the trim that is around the windows that is not part of the actual window, is the board's expectation that that would remain blue, or would that be white to match the window frame?
I was under the assumption it would stay the blue that it is.
Okay.
That was also what I thought was being described.
And I think that's fine.
Chase, can you
And I
condition that
concur.
just so we have a record of it?
So basically, or it could, yeah, another condition it's the trim, all the existing wood trim will stay whatever that existing color is.
And can you just say all existing? Thank you, Chase. I know you have a tough job this evening.
All right, let me bring this back up. Does that look okay to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that looks fine to me.
And my greatest concern is we can't change the color of the window itself once we commit to it. So anything else can be changed at a later date. So I'm good with all that.
All right, so maybe I'll make a new motion then to approve this application with the revised conditions.
And I can second.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes. Motion passes.
I
Thank you.
appreciate your efforts, and I thank Chase and Nicole. You are amazing that you put this on. So thank you so much.
Everybody, thanks for your flexibility in trying to review this without documents. So I'm sure the applicant appreciates it.
I do.
Okay.
I have to interrupt my participation. I'm going to put myself on mute and stop my video so that I can take my poor dog who is crying out for a little break.
Does everyone want to take a break now or wait a little longer to see how we're doing? We can take a short break now. How long do you think that would be?
2 minutes, but I'm here alone and she's been whining for the last 30, so I need to take it.
Well, I think the presentation, we'll still be doing the presentation, so I think we can.
Thank
Okay.
you. I just wanted to let you know in case you asked for my opinion on something while I was gone. I'll be right back.
All right. Case number 3, 185 South Riverview Street, minor project review. This application is a request for minor exterior modifications to a previously approved single-family home on a 0.41 acre site zoned Historic District Historic Residential. The site is west of South Riverview Street, approximately 375 feet north of the intersection with Short Street. Ms. Martin will be our presenter. And Nicole, it looks like you're ready right now.
I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Okay, good evening. As mentioned, this is a request for exterior modifications to a previously approved application for a new single-family home on a 0.41 acre site located on the west side of South Riverview Street. This was most recently before the board in January of 2021, at which time this residence was approved. With that approval, the Architecture Review Board reviewed and approved all elevations and material selections. As the design has been further refined and due to the availability of materials, the applicant has progressed and specified alternate selections and final design details. So the east elevation, which faces South Riverview Street and is the front elevation, the modification here is to change from a double door to a single door in keeping with the cottage character. The north elevation, which is the accessible to the garage, the modifications here are to go to a more simple garage door as well as a new side door that provides additional panes of windows and light. The west elevation, which is the rear facing elevation, the applicant is proposing to eliminate one window on the garage. This modification will be offset on the south elevation of the garage where one window is added. Additionally, modifications to the side door as well as sliding door and elimination of a screen door on the enclosed Three Seasons room is proposed. Additionally, the door or the window on the main portion of the home will be shifted slightly. You'll also notice here that some of the window designs are modified from 6-pane windows to 4-pane windows, which provides a more simplistic design character. On your screen are the materials that were generally approved by the board in 2021. At the time, the home was proposed to be clad in a fieldstone with buttered joints. The remaining portion of the home, as well as the garage, was proposed to be clad in a vertical clapboard siding. The home was proposed to be stained in a white birch, and the garage was proposed to be stained in a mountain ash. At the time, a slate roof was proposed in a slate gray color. As design details have progressed, the applicant has selected final materials, which include an alteration to go to a black slate roof, a weatherized standing seam metal roof. The exterior stone has been selected as a custom blend and will still have the buttered joints. The blend will not contain any reds or oranges. The front door has been modified, as have the garage doors, as shown here. Finally, paint selections are also included. The main home will now be, the main home will still be the stone, with the additions being a vertical board and batten siding, painted sandbar, and the garage will be a vertical board and batten siding, painted iron ore. And the doors and columns will all be a stained natural wood. And finally, windows are proposed to be dark black in color with gray gutters. With that, this application has been reviewed against the minor project review criteria, and staff is recommending approval with no conditions, given the consideration of the comprehensive color palette as well as physical material samples that were provided, and the general design intent and aesthetic in keeping with the original approval. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the applicant is here as well tonight. Thank you.
Board members, any questions for Nicole?
I have one question. So there's the overhead garage door or overhead door that was being proposed for the gym on that back side of the garage. I wasn't clear what door was being used for that. Is it the same door that's being used for the garage doors?
It is not.
I couldn't tell from the cut. My cut sheets were really blurry and I just couldn't tell what the garage was. Do you have a picture that you could show of the garage door and of that the one for the gym on the backside?
Yes, I can definitely pull that up. The primary difference is that the sliding glass door on the rear of the home that is modified to be a garage door will read very similar to a window. It's a glass door with a black metal frame.
Okay.
And I will pull up the cut sheet, and perhaps the applicant might be able to speak to that in more detail if you have additional questions.
Yeah, I just couldn't, I know there was a cut sheet included. It was just really blurry, and I also couldn't tell what was the garage and what was the other door.
Marty, it looked like you were nodding. Do you have a question? Okay. All right. I saw Mr. Taylor and I saw the Gaddatis earlier. I'm not sure if who would like to speak, if they have anything to add.
This is Paul Gaddati. Thank you for the opportunity to try to provide some clarity. A couple notes relative to the changes that we are seeking tonight. The door that we're talking about, Amy, I will tell you that that door has been the exercise room door has been probably the single biggest thing that we have struggled with, both from material selections and, as you can imagine, cost of those materials, and then trying to be in keeping with the 2x2 window pattern of the rest, because a garage door by its nature rolls, and so it's hard to have that same configuration for the window mullions. So that, plus the fact that a garage door by its nature is not very energy efficient, we have struggled mightily with that. So what we like the way this elevation looks with that garage door. We are seeking your approval of that. I will say that we're still trying to confirm exactly the right door configuration. So that's probably the one issue that we've gone back and forth several times on. So I think it's important for you to understand at least the behind the scenes that's going on relative to that specific door.
Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody have any additional questions for either Nikki or the applicants? I see Mr. Taylor on the screen. Do you want to add something?
Just very little.
Okay.
And the main thing is that we do appreciate the opportunity to come back to talk about materials even after this project's begun construction. As I had a brief email exchange with Nikki a few days ago, as I know, Gary, working with an architecture review board in a historic district gets things a little bit out of sequence sometimes with the normal design and building process. So being able to come back and talk about materials again is a huge help to me and to my clients who can't always make those decisions during the design phase. So thank you for that. Other than that, as Paul said, the different options that were explored for that door, it's gone back and forth. I think the one that is proposed, not the garage door, but the one after that, the two-part door is the best. It looks the best of the three that you've seen on that side of the house. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, board members, first of all, have we had any public comment?
We have not had any public comment on this application.
Okay. Board members, how do you feel about the changes?
I went over and viewed the materials. That caused much confusion apparently when I went in. But they were all fine. I don't see any problems or have any questions about the material itself
Okay.
I don't either.
or the need for changes.
Yep.
Okay.
In general, I was okay. I was just really curious about the garage doors because, again, they were blurry and it looked really one picture looked very modern, like a very modern garage door, which is a huge change to the overall look. And I just wanted to get a better look at the cut sheet.
Okay. Marty, do you have any comments?
Fine question. In that I saw the materials at the city, but are they painting the garage all black? I just have a clarifying on that. Is that
The garage is proposed to be painted iron ore.
That contrast in color of the garage was part of the original submission and renderings that we reviewed. So we always did see that, I believe, as something that was going to be different. Marty, you didn't have the benefit of being on the previous review sessions with the project. I'm fine with it.
I just wanted to clarify that was the case.
And I'm fine with all the proposed changes. So we have a recommendation for approval from the staff. Is there a motion to approve?
I can make the motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Cram,
Yes, though I still didn't get to see my garage. Yeah, that's fine.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki.
Yes.
Thank you, and thanks for coming back and reviewing the material changes with us.
Thank you for all your help this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right.
Thanks.
Moving on to items 4 and 5. 110, 112 South Riverview Street. This is both a demolition and a minor project review. Okay, I'm going to read 4 and 5 into the record together, but we'll consider each case separately. So we'll talk about the demolition, and we'll go through the process for the demolition, and then we'll discuss the house. The application is a request for the demolition of a contributing two-family home to facilitate construction of a new single-family home, and a request for construction of an approximately 3,000 square foot single-family home on a 0.59 acre site zoned historic district, historic residential, and located east of South Riverview Street, approximately 75 feet south of the intersection with Penny Hill Lane. Mr. Hounshell will be our presenter, and I'll, Zach, it looks like you're already ready, so the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I just want to clarify that everyone's seeing the full screen.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, good evening. As Mr. Alexander had stated, this is an application, or this is review for two applications tonight, the first being a demolition request and the second being a minor project for the property of 110 and 112 South Riverview Street. As stated, we will review the demolition request first, followed by discussion and determination. Following determination, we would then move into the minor project review for the similar process. So the site is highlighted in yellow on the screen. The site is approximately 0.59 acres in size and is southeast of the intersection of South Riverview Street and Penny Hill Lane. The site is zoned historic district, historic residential. Shown on the screen is a zoomed in view of the sites with an existing 2-foot storm easement located on the north side of the property. This site also has significant grade change from west to east across the site as you move towards the Scioto River, which is located on the east side of this property. The Scioto River does, because of the proximity to the Scioto River, there are significant floodplain and floodway limits, which are highlighted in the varied colors on the screen, the blue being the floodway for the Scioto River. And then as you move left on the screen, those would be the floodplain limits. So there are significant natural features on the site that do limit development on the eastern half of this site. Shown on the screen are some context photos of surrounding and adjacent properties that are on South Riverview Street. What you're seeing here is number one is 134 and 136 South Riverview Street, which is located south of the existing property. Number two on the context map is 84 South Riverview Street, which is north. And then numbers 3 and 4 are located on the opposite side of South Riverview Street, adjacent to this property. In March of 2021, the ARB informally reviewed this application for a potential demolition and new construction of an approximately 2,900 square foot single family home. In general, the board was supportive of the proposed demolition request. However, before making a true decision and recommendation, they did request additional documentation about either the financial liabilities of this property and how they would affect the current property owner, or documentation analysis of how the existing structure is not contributing to the historic district. This proposal is similar to an informal review in 2018 for the demolition of the existing structure and construction of a new 3,000 square foot single family home. However, that application did not move forward following the informal review. So the applicant is requesting approval of a demolition request for the existing structure. This building was built in 1966 as a one-story ranch-style brick duplex with a balcony to the rear of the home. In 2017, the city conducted the historic and cultural assessment within the historic district. The HCA considered this property contributing based on the condition of the site, in the site possessing all 7 of the criteria of integrity for the site as reviewed with the assessment. It should be noted, however, that this property is not listed on the Ohio Historical Inventory. Additionally, the city's architectural consultant provided a detailed review of the existing and proposed structure for the board's review and consideration. This detailed review was provided with everyone's packets for tonight. The architectural consultant confirms the results of the assessment and states that the character defining features contribute to the character of this district. However, the consultant does outline that the review conducted was based on the exterior of the structure, and the applicant does address and specifies that the engineering report that was provided with this application does speak to more of the significant structural deficiencies in the building, as well as some of the safety measures that are located throughout the property. So shown on the screen are the existing conditions of the duplex structure. The photos shown on the screen do capture deficiencies identified in the previous demolition request in 2018, as well as the photos provided by the structural engineer who provided a report on the structure for the current application. The structural engineer identifies significant structural issues, including the roof framing, floor framing, as well as the balcony, foundation, and railing deterioration throughout the site, throughout the building. Many of these items can be shown and seen on the screen currently. So the applicant did pursue the contributing structure demolition requirement. As we had discussed with the informal, they had 2 options. One was to justify whether this property or whether the site would be considered non-contributing, and the other would be to pursue analysis and provide documentation about the financial liability of this site. And the applicant has done the financial liability, which is the requirement for contributing structures. Contributing structures do have 3 criteria that need to be met in order to receive approval for demolition, with a 4th criteria providing additional information that can be reviewed with the application by the Architecture Review Board. The first criteria is, will all economically viable use of the property be deprived without approval of the demolition? Staff had reviewed the documents provided by the applicant and decided that this criteria was met. The applicant did provide 3 options that did not consider demolition of the existing structure. The first option, option A, would be keeping the structure as is and renting at the current rate, which is about $900 per side, also equating to $1,800 per month for the entire structure. The current value of the rent does create a negative cash flow on the property for the property owner. Option B would be to restore and update the existing structure and rent at the current market rate, which would be $3,600 per month, and that's a combination of both units within the structure. This current market rate was determined based on what is being charged in the area for structures and units of similar size, and then just considering the market of the area. The applicant did provide an estimated $400,000 restoration cost based on the structural engineer's analysis in updating the building to meet the current building code requirements. These costs were also determined and provided by the property owner's opportunity to gain a return on investment for the structure. It should also be noted that the applicant did provide a letter from the current lien holder and bank provider, which would be Fifth Third Bank. And in their statement, they did say that they would not be providing any finances for renovations of the existing structure, whether it be option B or C. They would only be supportive of complete demolition of the site of the building and a new construction. So considering that the applicant would be required to pay for the cost of these renovations out of pocket without help from the bank, that would create obviously a negative cash flow, but also be a huge economic burden on them. And option C would be renovate and convert the existing structure into a single family unit. They estimated a cost of almost $900,000 for the renovation cost based on the updates that need to be made to the structure and updating it to building code requirements and updating the building to their liking as well. This would result in about a $1.325 million investment into the property, which would be well over the potential appraisal value of the converted building. That figure is taken between the $900,000 estimate as well as what the property was purchased at. And additionally, as stated in option B, the current lien holder would not finance the renovation of the existing structure. Criteria 2 is, will the reasonable investment-backed expectations of the property owner be maintained without approval of the demolition? Staff finds this criterion to be met. The structural engineer did provide a report, which was included in everyone's documents for tonight, identifying many of the significant issues with the structure, which had been discussed prior to this slide. The cost to invest in the property is significant based on the previous estimates of construction. Additionally, the applicant would be at fault for the financing of all of these improvements without any financial backing from the bank. And the third criteria would be, was the economic hardship created or exacerbated by the property owner? Staff did find this criteria to be met. In 2018, this site was reviewed for an informal review to consider demolition of the existing structure. And many of the photos and deficiencies that were described in the engineer's report were provided with that presentation and within the materials of that application. The current applicant has invested in the site to fix the plumbing, the furnace, and fix some water leaks to get the property in order to be able to rent it as is. And additionally, the fourth criteria, this is not a requirement, but is more a consideration for items that the applicant can provide for the ARB's review. The applicant has worked with staff to provide these documents for an overall review of the application. With consideration of the criteria, planning staff is recommending approval of the proposed demolition with one condition, and that is that they would not be able to demolish the structure until they received approval of the minor project. I would be happy to answer any questions there might be for staff. Otherwise, the applicant is here to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Board members, any questions for Zach? And this is just, and I'm just saying this for all of our benefits for the applicant as well. This first part is just dealing with the demolition. Okay, so I don't see anybody raising their hand. So is the applicant?
One question. Well, it might be for, no, it's okay. It might be for the applicant and only for complete, because I think what was presented from the demo was quite good. But if you go back to option C, I'm just trying to make sure I get the math right, because certainly you're going to, the applicants here, they're going to build a house on the site that will cost something. And just trying to understand, because in option C, where the estimated renovation cost is around 900, and the bank wouldn't, the lien holder would not fund that. Eventually, you're going to build something else on that site. Just trying to understand, is it because if you put the 900 in, it wouldn't appraise for that much, and a new build would? Just to try to clarify how option C is different than what you're proposing to build new on the site.
Yeah, if the applicant would like to identify himself or herself and answer that.
Good evening, Mark Frent. Appreciate everybody taking the time tonight to hear both these cases. To answer the question, I think it's actually both. The bank will not loan. They're looking at two things: existing structure and what that value will be at the end of the day, and they don't think that value will be high enough to go ahead and support the 900,000 to build and upgrade it, as well as I think they also looked at it. Oh boy, I'm trying to remember exactly what the bank said during my conversation. Ask me the question again, because I had some thoughts on it, but the bank has pretty much said just no way do they want to do anything with the existing structure. They don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, my question was just because C, I mean, eventually you're going to build something. So C, if you renovate it or if you build something new, it's going to cost something. Just trying to make sure I get my mind around the reason that the bank wouldn't renovate it to code versus building something new to code. So I was just trying to understand.
I think it was, without having the bank sit here, from my understanding, is based all on appraised value. Either way, they don't see the value being high enough for that cost, regardless whether new or. I think they were more worried about value when it came to, just redoing the current structure.
Okay.
Right. I've dealt with that before, Sean, and it's usually the bank feels that with all those type of the amount of work going into it, technically the house wouldn't be worth that value to them. So as an investment from the bank, if that homeowner just flipped and gone and the bank got the house back, they wouldn't be able to sell it to make back their nut that they invested, in short, basically what the bank is saying.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I don't know the difference. Yeah, the difference between, new and reno and the difference cost, or you can build new for cheaper. Could be that also could be something.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Our builder Rodney's on here. He can go ahead and help address that.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay, all right. Oh, thanks. What that was specifically is that when I talked to Mark about that earlier, and I know what what we went through was, we can control and dictate the cost up front for sure with the new build. With tearing this apart and digging into it and start to do a lot of stuff by hand and do a lot of stuff by individual man hours, there's no way we could predict or control all the costs. So we had this sort of an open-end type of situation that could create a real big problem, especially when it went to the foundation issues after we talked to the engineer. We don't know what we would have to solve or fix for sure. So you would leave too much of an open end.
Okay.
If that helps
So
explain that.
yeah, it does. Because for me, then the bank is just not willing to take that risk premium. So for me, then that helps me just be able to understand how you got to that spot. Yeah, for me, that's fine.
Any other questions for either the applicants or Zach regarding the presentation? Okay. Do you want to comment on the amount of public comment we received, Zach or Nikki?
So I would be happy to comment. We do have, I believe it is 8 public comments. They consider both the minor project and demolition. So they are spread between the two. They had been distributed to everyone prior to the meeting, but if you would prefer for those to be read into the record, I'm sure Nikki and I could split that task up.
Do any board members feel the need to read those into the record?
I don't need that.
No, I read them all in the packet.
I think there's only one that deserves clarification, and one of the letters was opposed to the division into 2 lots, but supportive of the demolition. That we can address it in the next part, but that owner also wanted some verification that the new construction would not encroach into the stormwater easement. But yeah, from my reading, every one of those letters supported the demolition. Okay.
Yeah, you had a second, last minute letter, I think that came today or yesterday in the packet, just to bring everyone's attention to that. So I think there were a total of 8. And I also wanted to just clarify from the beginning of the presentation, I think Zach said, or my hearing was, he said that it was a 2-foot storm easement, but actually it's a 24-foot storm easement. And the plans that we will be discussing here in the next case do not encroach into that storm easement.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks, Marty. So we have a staff recommendation to approve the demolition. So we might as well get right into this and see how we all feel about it.
For me,
I support it.
Yeah. I'm the same. I think you can look at the costs and you can nickel and dime what they would be, but I think for me it's clear it's not support economic. Yeah, I can't speak. Wow, you can't
feasible.
Support it with the money. Yeah, it's not feasible. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Not economical. It has a lot of support from the community.
Marty.
Okay, so it's clear that there's support for the demolition. So would someone like to make a motion and then we'll vote on that?
Sure, I can make the motion. Or go ahead, Amy, I'm sorry. Or is that Marty?
I have a clarifying question on that because we can't approve the demolition until we have an approved minor project review. So is it, we approve it, this is more of a procedural thing for our board, but do we approve the demolition and then go forward with consideration? Or should we hold off?
Yeah, Zach, you can step in here, but I think there's a qualification in the language that says that we can vote to approve it subject to them getting approval for a new structure to be built on the property.
Yeah, I see the language here in the recommendation of the report. I just was clarifying the timing in the hearing.
Yes, Gary, you are correct. You all would be able to approve this demolition. However, they would not be able to carry out the order until they had that approved minor project.
Okay. All right. Okay. So who raised their hand before to make the motion? Does someone?
Go ahead. Whoever wants to make the motion.
I'll move to approve the demolition subject to ARB approval of a minor project review application for new construction on one of the 2 lots.
Okay.
Excellent. I can second that.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. And I thought the financial information that was provided was very thorough and very helpful. Okay, we'll move into the second part of this. So now we're going to talk about the house on the site. So Zach, do you want to continue your presentation?
I would be happy to. Give me just one moment. Perfect. So with the approval of the demolition, we will now review the minor project review for 110 South Riverview Street. With the approval of the demolition request, the applicant is requesting approval of this application for the construction of a new single-family home. The applicant is proposing to split the lot into 2 developable lots, with both of which meeting the minimum requirements for lots within the historic residential zoning district. The historic residential zoning district does require that newly established lots meet a minimum lot size as well as a minimum lot width. And both of these lots do meet those requirements. So with the lot split, it is an administrative application that is reviewed and approved by planning and engineering staff. The applicant will be required to provide the 24-foot stormwater easement. Thank you, Marty, for clarifying that as well. I apologize if I had stated that incorrectly earlier, but it is a 24-foot stormwater easement on the north side of this property. They will be required to provide that with their submittal for the lot split so that we can take that into record. The applicant is proposing to develop the northern of the 2 lots, which contains the stormwater easement. The applicant is proposing an approximately 3,000 square foot single family home. This home will be designed as a 1.5 story cottage home. And shown on the screen are the lot requirements listed within the Historic District Code. The applicant has provided the following measurements. For the siting of the home on the lots, the proposed location of the home meets all applicable and lot coverage, building coverage criteria that is shown on the list here. However, zoning code does require that the attached front-loaded garage be a minimum of 20 feet set back from the front facade of the building. Highlighted in blue is the location of this front-loaded garage, which is attached to the main structure. It is currently set back 3 feet from the front facade of the building along Riverview Street. So this was discussed in detail at the informal review. The applicant has moved the main structure forward of the garage instead of pushing the garage back, creating this 3-foot separation, and they are still meeting the 0-foot front setback, which is the requirement along South Riverview Street. So the applicant is proposing a waiver to allow for the 3-foot setback where a 20-foot setback is required. So shown on the screen are the proposed west and north elevations of the home. The west elevation is the front elevation of the home fronting South Riverview Street. Since the informal review, the applicant has modified the submittal with a number of items, such as changes to the stone foundation lines on both the north and south elevations. And also changing the sunroom to a covered porch and moving the existing chimney on the south elevation, and adding an additional chimney to the covered porch, which can be seen on the north elevation. The west elevation has generally stayed the same, with 2 side gabled roofs for the main portion of the home, with a front gabled roof, which encloses the 2-car garage and the covered porch. The secondary side gable, which is located, it connects the main portion of the main structure to the front gabled garage, is measured with a slope of 4x12, which is below the requirement of 6x12 for slopes for residential developments. A waiver is required for the decrease in slope for that secondary side gable roof line. The front porch is recessed into the front elevation of the building, and is clad in a board and batten vertical siding with the remainder of the elevation clad in horizontal siding. The siding is constructed of an engineered wood, which is currently not a permitted material within the district. However, it has been approved with previous residential minor projects within the district. So it is a material that is consistent with previous approvals. A waiver is required to permit this material for this construction. The architectural consultant does recommend that the proposed board and batten siding be replaced with horizontal siding to provide a coherent front elevation. Staff has provided a condition to address this recommendation. Additionally, the north elevation is also clad in horizontal siding with the covered porch clad in a flat panel. Those that were here prior with the informal, the sunroom did have an extension of the horizontal siding. This has since been changed to that flat panel. Both the flat panel, the horizontal siding, and the board and batten are all constructed of the engineered wood and are all of the same LP brand. Staff is recommending that the applicant revise the drawings to include a gap at the bottom of the panel in the closed patio or the closed porch to allow for drainage, and the porch door to be extended, porch floor to be extended over the band board as highlighted in the architectural consultant's report. Additionally, the applicant has added a stone-clad fireplace with chimney within the covered porch. The applicant should continue to work with staff to select an appropriate chimney cap detail for both the north and south chimneys, as well as for the north chimney, should extend the stone cladding all the way to grade to meet code. The applicant utilizes a number of 2/2 and 2/3 casement windows on both elevations. These windows are aluminum clad wood windows and will be painted white to match the siding. Shown on the screen are the east and south elevations. The east elevation is the rear elevation of the property. The home includes 2 stone chimneys, 2 balconies with stone support systems, and a cantilevered street story, which would be the upper story. The height of the structure at the rear of the home is 29.5 feet from grade to the midpoint of the eave, which exceeds the maximum height for homes, which is 24 feet. The home does meet the required height on the front elevation, where it is currently 19 feet. A waiver is still required for the height of the home at the rear of the structure. The south elevation includes a few changes, such as the chimney being moved to the exterior wall to help break up the facade. Additionally, the foundation was continued along the elevation to meet the chimney to create a more consistent facade. However, on the east elevation, just below the covered porch, the stone foundation creates an inconsistent break between the horizontal siding and the stone. Staff is recommending modifications to this stone foundation and to extend it to the top or to the bottom of the covered porch. The applicant also provides 2/3 and a single 2/2 casement window on the south elevation. The consultant recommends that the windows be replaced with a traditional sash window to maintain the historic context of the district, as well as modifying the rear windows to be consistent with the rest of the building. The rear windows are casement windows. All are made by Pella, and they're all of the Pella Lifestyle series. The applicant is also providing composite gable vents located in the main side gable form and the front gable form. The applicant should provide wood gable vents to replace the composite gable vents. And shown on the screen are the architectural details for the porch columns, the wood trim, or the window trim, and the balcony railing. All 3 items will be constructed of wood and will be painted to match the proposed white clad siding on the building. And additionally, for reference, shown on the screen are the proposed characters of the improvements as well for the new construction. And finally, the proposed materials. The majority of the structure will be painted the alabaster, which is an off-white. The LP Smart Side engineered wood siding and trim will be painted this. The front door will be wooden with an espresso stain. The shingles are Everest 42 laminate asphalt shingles in a shadow black color. And the stone water table and chimneys will be the Casi di Sassi Cremora blend. Hopefully I did not butcher that company name. And then the coach lights will be Northern Light 2-light wall mounts in a museum black. And the balcony decking will be the Eichwood decking in a natural finish. And then the railing, as stated, will be a white finish. So staff has reviewed this application to all applicable minor project review criteria. We are recommending approval of all 4 of the proposed waivers. The first waiver being to the attached garage location setback and allowing for a 3-foot setback where 20 feet is required. The second being the maximum building height for the rear of the building to be 29.5 feet in height where 24 is required. The third being the facade materials to allow for the engineered wood as a permitted material in the building. And the pitch measure to be 4 by 12 roof pitch, which is below the 6 by 12 requirements. And finally, recommending approval of the minor project review. And there was a condition listed within the staff report, so I have added it at the bottom. So there are 8 conditions. The condition that was added is that the applicant work with staff to choose an appropriate patio lighting fixture, as their current proposal does not show any lighting for the patio. So with that, it's a lot of information, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Otherwise, the applicant will be happy to address any of the architectural elevations they have provided. Thank you.
Board members, any questions for Zach? I'm sure we'll have some as we go through this. All right. Does the applicant have anything to add to the presentation?
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple points. First off, thank you all for your input from the last informal meeting, and thanks again for your time tonight to review this submittal. A couple of things just wanted to address on some of the items on the staff report. The board and batten siding on the front of the home, we were hoping to be able to do that underneath the front porch and the hyphen. I'm not sure that in the consultant's report, I think they were fine with it being on the hyphen. The staff report doesn't clarify whether you're asking to eliminate the board and batten on the front altogether, or if it's just underneath the front porch. Again, I think the homeowner would like to see the board and batten under the front porch and the hyphen. I think I would ask, for that, but then also, I guess, to add to that, if you object to it under the front porch, I think at least on the hyphen, it's appropriate. And then one of the other points was the stone underneath the covered porch. That area of the house really won't be seen in any public view. The only place you're really going to see it is if you're down at the river looking up. It's kind of hidden from the street. So in order to just, not spend money where it's not going to be seen, we are hoping to be able to just keep the siding underneath the covered porch and not extend the chimney foundation down to the grade there. I'm not sure the code reference on the chimney foundation. It is a prefabricated fireplace in which is underneath the porch, and it's internal. So I don't think you'll ever read that there's no foundation underneath it. I understand, when you have a prefabricated fireplace on an outside wall, you definitely want to see that fireplace foundation come down to the grade. However, in this situation, I feel like it's not necessary for support, structural support, And again, aesthetically, I don't think you'll ever read that there's not a foundation underneath that fireplace, just because it is internal and it's a place that's not going to be seen by the public. So we were kind of hoping to be able to keep the materials as drawn underneath the covered porch in the back corner of the house. Everything else, again, the windows, I think we touched on this the last time. We feel pretty strongly about using the casement windows. And then again, in the rear of the home, eliminating the grids to not obstruct the views of the river from inside the house. I don't think there was much pushback on that during the informal review. So we kind of stuck with that theme. So again, appreciate the input, and I'll turn it back over to you folks.
Thank you. Thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant? Okay. Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, in the public comment area, the only letter that had anything adverse was the one that was questioning 2 houses, but I don't think there were any other. Most of the letters were favorable. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes.
Okay. Okay. And nothing new's come in since we started the meeting. Okay. All right. All right. Well, could we have maybe the first we have to vote on the 4 waivers. So maybe the language could be up on the screen and we can talk about those. All right. So the first issue we have to address is how we feel about these waivers. And I think they're all pretty clear, so we can address them all in our conversation. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I reviewed the prior informal review hearing for this board when I was not a member. Oh, but I'm not on.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. When my screen goes blank, I can't tell if I'm on or off. So, or not blank, but I see the screen. But anyway, I did review the prior informal review hearing, and so I was familiar with the discussion of the 3-foot setback and the linear look of the front. And so I would just comment that I think they've done a good job of addressing that issue and pushing the garage back 3 feet and not 20 feet, obviously, or it would be dangling over the river.
Okay. All right. All right. Thanks, Marty. Who would like to go next?
I can go. I agree with what Marty said. I mean, the site doesn't allow 20-foot. I forget the roof pitch for me is okay. I think it looks fine in there. The engineered wood is fine, and there was one more. General. And the height is a site issue, since it's okay. So for me, they're all appropriate.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right.
I'm okay with them all.
Okay. Frank?
Same here.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm okay with them all. So is there a motion to approve the 4 waivers?
Are we allowed to approve them all at once?
I think that's the way the language was written. So we approve them all as a group.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the 4 recommended waivers.
And I can second.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki.
Yes.
Okay. That portion is approved. Now to discuss general approval, minor project review with the 8 conditions. So looks like Zach, you're already, okay, you're one step ahead of me. Okay, who would like to start on this list?
Could I maybe clarify just between maybe with Amy or Gary, because board and batten, I looked at this a lot over the weekend a bit, but with the consultant saying it's not for primary buildings, I was having a hard time finding where that came from. And is that a thing? Because I saw a lot of pictures of buildings that are board and batten from in the past. So I was having a hard time with that one. I just need maybe from you guys who are more in that. Is that a thing? Or
I don't know where that came from.
Okay.
It is totally acceptable historic growth.
Right.
This
All right.
particular consultant just has a thing against it, and she says that in every single consultant report.
Yeah.
But it is a common, normal
Okay.
building
Material. Yeah.
That's what I thought when I looked. Okay.
Yeah.
Clear for me. Yep.
Okay.
Do we want to have the 8 back up?
Please.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
go ahead and start. I'm okay with with the board and batten under the hyphen. That's okay with me if that's what if that's what they want. So I'm in favor of removing the first condition. I agree with the making sure that we use the wood gable vent. I agree with that. I think they corrected the stone foundation on the south side. That was my biggest concern, and that's been fixed. So I'm okay with not extending it up underneath the porch. They fixed the area that I was concerned with. The chimney, I will leave that up to code because I don't know what the proper code is regarding that chimney. So that battle can be fought with staff as far as I'm concerned. I'm talking the stone, extending the stone chimney, chimney cap, working that detail. That's fine. The conditions don't state anything about the windows, which would lead me to say your windows as shown in your drawings are acceptable. I personally am okay with the casement windows on the east elevation. But you don't have a condition regarding windows on your thing, so.
If I may, very quickly, I did add in the presentation, I did talk about the windows and what our consultant had requested. However, you're correct. We did not add a condition for that. We just wanted to maintain consistency and displaying what the consultant had recommended. I know we had discussed in detail at the informal about the casement windows, and generally the board was supportive. So that's why we did not add that condition.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm fine with the casement windows. So I think I covered all of them.
I guess I can jump in real quick. Amy covered them all. I would say the number 6, and this is procedural. I'm not sure if we have to vote on that or not. I mean, can we vote against code? If that's a code matter, I'm not sure ARB would have any say on that because it'd be more construction code, building code.
I don't think it's a building code issue. I think it's in our guidelines having to do with chimneys not appearing to be artificial or prefabricated, and so often they're cantilevered. So I think it comes from our code, but not the building code.
And in that case, I'm okay with it just because of the fact of where it is located. I mean, even from the river, it's all vegetation down there. I don't think you can see it unless you're on top of it at the house. So as long as it's not a building code matter that we would have no say over, I'm fine.
But man, that's a good clarification because it's in the code, right? Now I have to go back and look again. Oops, code.
Yeah,
it's a matter of which code it's
in our zoning.
Yeah, it's in the zoning code.
Right, not a building code.
Yeah, but you'd still need a waiver. Right? I mean, we can't, it's I mean, just maybe from staff, it's not a thing you can add as a condition, right?
Do you want to clarify that, Zach or Nikki?
Sure. And I may lean on Nikki because I'm a little fuzzy with this, but my understanding is it would require a waiver. It's not
Yeah.
something we could condition since it is a code requirement that chimneys extend in grade. Nikki, am I wrong in saying that?
That's correct. Yeah, you would have to waive a code requirement.
But wouldn't this be considered an internal chimney? It's not on the exterior because there's a enclosed structure around it.
Yeah, but usually exterior is the envelope, the heated envelope. So
Oh,
anything
okay.
beyond the heated envelope
Okay.
is considered exterior space.
Yeah, and I think from a zoning code perspective, particularly in the architecture review district, it's getting more at the character versus the function, at least in the zoning code.
So Nick, I'm not sure. So would it? So we'd have to. It's not a condi. We'd have to approve a waiver. And I'm looking at the criterion here, right? Is that
Yes,
correct?
you would
Okay.
have to
Yep.
approve a waiver.
Okay, I got you. All right. And
Okay.
for me, I agree with. I mean, all the points that Amy said. For me, board and batten's okay. I can take that out. The rest of them, she said, I think is okay. Once taking the stone up, I don't have an issue with the way it looks on the applicant's drawing. Then we just sort it through the chimney.
Okay.
I have, I would just comment on the condition needs a correction, I think in 7, where it says applicant execute the 24-foot stormwater easement with the submittal of the proposed lot split. I think that's duplicative. So it would just say applicant to execute the 24-foot stormwater easement with the city of Dublin, I guess, for the proposed lot split. So in other words, when they
Yeah.
split this property, they want it to be re-executed.
Yeah, ultimately that condition is just making sure that with their lot split submittal, that they provide the 24-foot easement on their documents. So it's really just a clarifying item.
So you just need to see it on their documents, or do you need it written in? Is it currently in the property description? Is it legally defined in the property description currently?
Yeah, with the survey that they had submitted and that was in their documents that they provided to us, it wasn't showing the 24-foot stormwater easement. It is there, but we just need to see that on their survey.
I see. So it's legally been established. So you have that. You just need to see it documented.
Correct.
It's
Okay.
probably written into the deed, I would imagine also, or just
Well, or recorded, the easement. would
or
have been
recorded, yeah.
And then it runs with the land, but maybe this condition 7 needs to say the applicant will reflect the 24-foot stormwater easement with the submittal of the proposed lot split, so that it's on the documents that they are submitting, since that seems to be where it is missing. Because it runs with the land if it's recorded easement. If they separately need to have it re-recorded or something to that effect without seeing the deed or the easement document and how it was recorded initially, I don't know. But normally easements run with the land.
Can you?
Could I clarify that? I actually don't think it's there anymore, and the reason I say that is, I think it's Penny Drive. Back in the day, was supposed to extend over the river, so it was supposed to just keep going from west to east over the river, and that's where the easement came. But it had since expired, the way the surveyor explained it to me, and I don't think there's anything there. We're certainly not opposed to putting something on there, but just for clarification for the moment, to the best of my knowledge, it does not exist at the moment.
Well, if does the city want the easement? Because as I understood that easement, it was a drainage easement. It had despite the fact that it may have once also contemplated a road across the river, it is a drainage easement, and the fallout there, the drainage down from the street and from that area to the surface water drainage to the river. So I would assume, I mean, that's an important point that
Nikki, looks like Nikki can help us here with this.
Yeah. So these are all great questions, all great points, and things that will be handled administratively by staff as part of the lot split process. The lot split will have to be re-recorded with Franklin County. And I guess just for full transparency, it is the city's expectation that this easement would be provided and recorded with the lot split. So we would want to see that delineated, defined, and submitted at the time of the lot split.
So should we strengthen the language in it? Because I hate to approve something and then there's later a problem because an agreement can't be reached for that. So should we make any approval subject to the applicant coming to terms with the city for that easement?
I would agree with that.
Or should we table this until we get more clarification?
I mean, I think it's something that we can continue to work through together offline. I mean, we can go ahead and clarify the condition, but in terms of their site layout, regardless of whether or not this is shown, I don't believe it would be altering what the board is approving tonight, potentially.
Well, I think the bigger issue would be is if that easement is no longer there and and the city doesn't want it or doesn't need it, that might impact the location of the house on the lot, the northern lot. So I guess I'm having a little bit of trouble of seeing how it isn't really important that we go ahead. I'm sorry, Zach, but I just think it's important that we put some clarifying language on the condition.
Yeah, because a more logical design for the home on properties like this with a significant grade change is a horizontal house that parallels the street, as opposed to shorter, more compact homes that extend back. So if you had 12 feet more on each parcel, if I was the owner, I'd want to take advantage of that and have a lot less cut, which is excavation on the property, and a lot more building at grade. I mean, it would make a huge difference in the design of the house and how you might address the site. So I think it's really dangerous. I mean, we can make our approvals conditional on the 20. If the easement is not granted, then it needs to come back to us.
I don't understand that the easement's already there and they're going to build outside the easement. So they're on the appropriate building lot and they're building parallel to the easement. So they're legal if they build in that spot.
But the easement's not there.
That's the clarification. We don't know if the easement still exists.
Yeah, but it still doesn't matter, right? They're going to build, even if it exists, they're still going to build on not on it.
Well, if it doesn't exist, then wouldn't you want to move everything north to avoid being within a 3 foot of the next property line, and also how that impacts the split property? That's my point.
That sounds like an applicant issue, huh?
Yeah, I think we could approve it in its current state if the footprint remained in the exact spot that it's shown to us today. If the easement doesn't exist and they want to move the house, then they would have to come back to us. If I got that right, Gary?
Yeah, if they want to move the house, or change the design like the applicants before were very good about coming back to us. So
right. So we could actually vote today on what's in front of us as long as the easement does exist and everything remains the same. If the easement doesn't exist and they decide to move the house, then it has to come back to us. This is the way I would read it.
If I may jump in here really quick to maybe provide some clarity. And Andy, it looked like you were kind of biting to get at this as well. There's an existing gravity main, stormwater main that runs through the north portion there, and it's been directed to us from our city engineer staff that we require that 24-foot easement, and that's been discussed with the applicant from the beginning. That's why the building is sited the way it is. So it is a requirement from our engineering staff. That's why they had asked us to put a condition of approval, just so that we make sure that we acquire that with this application. So, you know, without that 24-foot storm easement, I mean, our engineering staff needs to have that. So that's why the condition's there.
So that goes back
Hopefully
to
that
my
provides some
comment
clarity.
of how it's worded. Perhaps that needs to be worded a little differently.
Yeah, why don't you put that back up, Zach, so we can see the wording? Andy, did you want to say something?
I was just going to repeat what Zach just said, that we are aware that there's a storm sewer pipe that runs through there, and the homeowner has met with the city's engineer and has discussed the 24-foot easement. So that hasn't been recorded yet because the lot split hasn't been recorded. So the easement hasn't been finalized. So our intention, you know, the homeowner's intention is to have the easement in there based on his conversations with the city engineer. So.
And for the record, I agree with all that. It'll be there.
Okay, all right, thank you. So that language is pretty clear that I just saw the cursor flashing in. What do you, Marty, would you still clarify that language further?
Well, it looks like the applicant provide the 24-foot stormwater easement on the new survey with the submittal of the proposed lot split. So basically that more or less implies that there is not a current recorded stormwater easement. I think that'll be fine.
Well, you're the lawyer here, so.
Well, I don't know if he made a change or not, but from what we were saying and what the applicant was saying, that there isn't even an easement, that's where the confusion came up, was when the applicant stated that actually there isn't an easement. But we do know now from Zach that no, the city wants an easement reflected. They want an easement in the split and the property split, and we will want that easement reflected on their plans for ARB, the ARB approved plans.
Okay. All right, so we're okay with that language the way it is right now. I'm assuming. Okay, other comments on those? I haven't commented yet on those 8 items. I do think the way the board and batten is used in the front of the drawings is confusing and very odd. It's usually you change material to differentiate between 2 elements, like the hyphen and the porch, as opposed to blurring the distinction between the 2. So I do think what's on there now is odd. And so I think one compromise is and I think the consultant recognizes that as well. She just says, get rid of it, which is certainly an option, but I don't like the way it continues to show up on the drawings. And I think we did present that feedback at the last meeting. The chimney, I don't think that chimney on the north side is going to be visible. So I'm sympathetic to the applicant there. Just building a chase all the way down, you know, another 12 feet and cladding it with cultured stone that's not going to be visible. I don't think that's really what the spirit of the code is. So I'm certainly willing to entertain a waiver for that. So that's my feedback. And actually, I do think that the consultant had some other good points, but that weren't included by the staff. I do agree with the windows in the back. I said it before, they should have the grids. However, if it's not a condition here, I'm certainly willing to be flexible there. So how do we want to proceed? So the only one there's some disagreement on is version 1 or item 1. Do we want to, I may be in the minority on that one. Do we want to strike it based on the majority? Do we want to leave it in, limit the use of the
Well,
board?
Gary, I think you're right, as in I don't prefer it the way it is. I think it would look better if it was just on the hyphen and didn't go under the porch too.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna be that picky about it. I mean, it's a pretty small portion of the house. So we'll see what the others say.
I think Mr. Milagro indicated that was really, following our last meeting, his intent to just put it on the hyphen.
Yes, I guess I would push back harder on eliminating it altogether. I think myself and the homeowner can live with eliminating under the front porch. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel strongly about it being on the hyphen, just to kind of, and in the code itself, it says board and batten would be appropriate on hyphens, and in garages. So I feel like it's appropriate there, definitely. And I guess, Mark, would you like to chime in, or?
Well, I certainly agree on the hyphen, and I mean, since we're all here talking about it, I'd like to get everybody else's viewpoint before we just give in on underneath the main porch. Personally, obviously I don't have any background from an architectural standpoint or historical architecture. I just personally like the way it looks, and obviously want to keep it that way.
And for I actually personally like the way it looks myself. The board and batten, kind of like board and batten. And for me, having extend in there, I'm not tied to either one. I'd certainly support keeping it across both. So, or yeah, having the porch and the hyphen.
I can go with the owner's preference on that. It's fine by me, because that's what, I don't think I would overrule what they would want on their house in this regard, in this instance.
Yeah, I'm not opposed.
All right. Okay, so we'll keep it in. All right, so do we vote on these as a group?
Sorry, I couldn't get my mic work. I think we can at this point.
Well, we would need to approve one more waiver for the chimney, which was, and then we could remove
Right.
condition, which would have been condition 5, now becomes a waiver.
Waiver, yep.
Right.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the 5th waiver is added at the bottom. The code section is correct. It's 153.174 I2, eliminating the extensions and grade of the northern chimney.
So can we just make a separate motion for the additional waiver?
Yes.
Okay.
But
So
I just have a question. Well, I just have a question on the waiver, because I'm just going through the waiver, the procedure here, right? Just, oops, I'm on the wrong one. So just to make sure, because this and the other ones, right? Because one of the waiver things is about reducing cost. That's one of the waiver conditions is it can't be for that. Just so we're clear if it comes back in a different time, right? That's E in the waiver, D in the waiver process. So we think if it looks, for me, I kind of agree in the spirit, but I just want to make sure we're clear.
But it meets other criteria for a waiver.
But then the waiver criteria has to meet all criteria in 5.
Well, it's just not purely economic, isn't the only reason.
Nope, it goes through I, but you have to do them all, right? Just
okay.
So just just so we don't get back to the end, we just had our review.
I just got to pull up the planning report.
Okay. Which one are you on?
So I'm on. Sorry, I'm trying to so it's one. What is this? Where are we at here? One. It'd be nice if these had page numbers at the bottom. 153.75. Good grief. L5. It's on page 80 on my code thing here.
Review, yes.
says based on all of the following criteria. I just want to make sure we're clear. I mean,
Right. So it's caused, the need is caused by the unique site conditions because it's
Yep.
on the slope in the rear of the site.
clear,
It won't negatively impact the historic district.
clear.
It's the spirit intent
Yeah.
of our guidelines because that was, so that's okay. It's not being requested solely to reduce cost. That's not the only reason
Yep.
they're asking for it. It's also because of its location.
And also the visibility.
So I think they've met their requirements here. It will ensure that it's a good development.
What
So
do you
I
think
think
about-
the criteria
Yep.
are met.
All right, that's fine.
Yep. I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, originally when we were talking about it in the original, one of the points was to reduce cost. We shouldn't do that. It came from the
Well,
applicant. So I
that's
just
just,
wanna-
it can't be the only, it's
Yeah,
also
yeah.
based on its location.
I got it. Just want to make sure that we're when we have to do another one that we're clear on how we approve this one. But because I agree.
I think these circumstances are pretty unique.
Yep, I would agree.
All right, so is there a motion to approve that last waiver?
I'll move to approve the 5th waiver.
Okay.
And I'll second. Or,
Go ahead.
I'll second.
All right, that was Sean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mrs. Cooper? Sorry,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper. Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Kaneki?
Yes.
Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes. Okay, so now we need to go back and vote on to approve the minor project review with we'll be down to 6 conditions.
Versus 7. I forget. Thought it was 7.
There were 8 actually.
There were 8 total.
We
Now we're
struck
down to 7.
2.
We struck
Oh,
2.
it's-
We struck number 1 and 5.
Yeah, that's right. Forgot. So yeah, you're right, Gary.
Or not 5, 6. We struck 6. The other question was, are we striking the one about modifying the foundation, the stone foundation in that back corner too? I was okay with striking that.
I'm
That was
not. I
number
think
4.
the consultant's right, and I really do think it helps the design to bring that stone up. This will be visible, unlike what we previously struck. So
But I thought, weren't they saying to bring it all the way up to the top?
she just to the cantilever. It's still going to, or if we can bring the drawings back up, it's still going to be relatively low. So
I thought they were saying do that entire wall, everything that was.
no, it'll be below the bump out. Which makes sense. It's more like a stone foundation. So it's continuing the line that you see on the south elevation, past the chimney and around the back.
Yep,
and
I see.
that integrates so much better with that
Oh,
column
on that
too.
corner. Okay, I was looking at the other corner. I see where you're saying.
Yeah, that'll tie. Right now, the column looks really isolated out there. I think that's going to help tie in with the column.
Okay, I didn't realize that's where it was. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I make a comment real quick?
You can make a
Yes,
comment.
yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the way that the condition's written, it says, let's see. Yeah, the app modify the stone foundation to extend to the bottom of the closed porch, subject to staff approval. I was under the impression that they were talking about just that interior corner underneath the open porch.
I think there was another location in her report, and maybe it's not captured, but I think there's another location in her report where she's talking about bringing it all the way up to your bump out, which to me is the logical place to take it, because then it aligns with what you've done on the south side and aligns with your column.
But she doesn't have that on her little sketch on the porch. She has the back wall of the walkout being siding still on her sketch.
Yeah, I don't have the text in front of me.
I have it here. Let's see here.
Yeah, I don't, it's not clear to me then
Yeah.
where we're talking.
If you look at sheet 10, page 10 of her report, she has a sketch of the rear elevation of the home. And she has stone drawn up underneath the covered porch, but not on the walkout section. The walkout wall is not, that she has it remaining siding there underneath the cantilever. And then where the foundation picks back up, where the actual concrete wall picks back up, it goes back to stone, just like, yeah. So the way I have it drawn now is that the foundation underneath the basement slab will be clad in stone, but the framed wall of the back walkout will be siding.
Framed.
What is her elevation? Is it her elevation? And I can't pull these up where I am. Her elevation on the north side. I know she has the chimney coming down.
Yeah.
How far does she take the stone on that one?
It matches with what I have.
It's, yeah. It looks like in there it's still stepped.
Okay, so that's the south. Yeah. I was wondering what on her north elevation.
No, on the north that she is coming down, and if I'm looking at it correctly, then she still has the siding still in there.
It's still stepped and it just has the chimney coming all the way down.
Yeah, and it still has siding.
Well, wait. Yeah, that's the column.
That's where it's confusing.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that's, it definitely would look better if we did more of it across the back, and we've made other applicants do that. But that's not the intent of, I think, the way the document's written.
Can staff clarify what their condition is, please? Because I don't understand what the staff is asking in the condition.
So the condition was speaking towards what the consultant was showing there. So if you're looking on the east elevation, where she's showing the stone going up underneath the covered porch, that's what staff is conditioning, not if you're looking from the north side, it's still, let's see. If you're looking from the north, it still kind of has the siding under it. But if you're looking from the rear, the stone's going all the way up to the bottom of the covered porch. So what the consultant is showing is what we're recommending.
And then I guess just for a little more explanation, the logic behind that is that the main core of the home would have a fully clad stone foundation.
Which is how I read it.
But that's not how it looks. So I have to admit I'm a little confused too.
So the east facing wall on the north end under the north porch, that's what they're asking to be stoned.
Fully stone, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm fine with that. That's fine, whatever.
All right.
I actually don't understand that because the other ones are stepped, but I'm.
It's going to be the
east
east wall The east
No, I see,
facing
I see,
wall.
I don't see, I mean, for me,
Yeah,
having that
I
full
think
stone wall doesn't look correct, but
I think
I
it has
see,
more benefit increasing it across the back of the structure as opposed to there, but
Yeah.
that's,
So.
That's what the staff has recommended,
Yeah.
so.
I got to interject here for a second. I'm sorry. Is the potential owner here? I guess I'd ask Andy. Andy, first of all, do you understand what the final recommendation is here, so that if we're not in agreement, we can at least say it right now and discuss it? Because I'm thoroughly confused.
The way I understand it is that the staff was asking for stone just underneath the covered porch.
That stone
And the
beyond,
rest of the back walls were fine the way they were drawn and submitted. And it was just underneath the covered porch that they were asking for stone to go up to just the bottom of the porch. And I guess I was asking that if nobody's going to really be seeing that area, can we maintain, stone over the concrete wall portion and then switch to siding over the framed sections?
but the back, I think that's what she's doing, because the back of your garage, are you going to take frame down beyond the slab elevation?
Well, that
Is it
would
back-
it'd be siding over a concrete wall, I guess.
Yeah,
in that,
what
in
I
that
think what
point.
she's
So,
doing is seeing that's potentially masonry, and it's logical to cover the masonry. I mean, you're right, you could fur out and run the framing down there.
right. I guess my biggest hang up is on the north wall of the underneath the covered porch, where they were proposing the chimney come down. Can we just side that wall, because that wall will be framed partially?
You're muted, Amy.
The answer was they weren't speaking to the north facing wall. The condition, as they are saying, only speaks to the east facing wall.
So
Well,
you can,
okay, so basically the back wall of the garage foundation be clad
Stone, and then your north facing wall
is okay with
was
siding.
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So the condition could even be specified that it is the east facing wall.
Okay.
As the applicant here, could I just, I'm still confused. What's the purpose of this when you're not going to see anything and we're just adding cost? I'm a little confused as to what the purpose is behind here. Keeping in mind that I'm not an architect in any shape or form, but I do understand spending money, and it just seems foolish to me to put stone, which is more expensive than the regular siding, when no one's going to see it unless you're on the river, which you're probably not going to see it anyhow.
the goal is to make foundations look like foundations. And since there's a foundation around the building that supports the building, so the goal is wherever the structure meets the ground, construction logic, even though you're using a synthetic, traditional construction logic is you wouldn't take a material that's wood or wood-like on a foundation or close to the ground. So the goal is try to make this look like a traditional building. Now, we gave you a break with the chimney, but that was still the goal with the chimney. Okay, chimneys are masonry. They don't float in the air. That's the logic with the chimney. Here, I think the logic is even clearer. You will see it from the corner. It's a foundation. We want it to look like a foundation, which is not wood, it's stone. We want it to look like a traditional foundation. The house would definitely be improved. You may be concerned with cost. Aesthetics are also an issue. The house would be improved if there was even more stone across the back. But because that's not the interpretation of the language there, we haven't put that in the document.
Andy, does that make sense to you?
Yes. I feel like, yeah, if we have to put stone on the back wall of the garage and keep siding everywhere else, then I think that's a compromise that should make.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, are we ready to vote on this?
Can we see the language again? So are we changing the number 4?
So I did add that it be on the east facing wall to be
Okay.
more specific.
Clear.
Okay, we okay with this now?
Mhm.
Board members, okay.
Yep.
Is the applicant okay? Is the applicant okay with them, the revisions?
I'm okay with it. Mark?
Well, sure. I mean, if I'm being honest, no, but to get it approved and move on, certainly.
All right. So I'll make a motion to approve the minor project review with the 6 conditions as amended this evening.
I'll second it.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes,
Ms. Cram.
Yes.
all right, thank you. Okay, I know the last applicant may not like hearing this.
Thank you all.
Okay. Board members and staff, do you want to take a 5-minute break or do you want to just go through, keep going?
I'd like to take, if it can only be 2 minutes, but if we could just take a quick break, that would be good.
I see some other heads shaking.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. 2 minutes.
I say 2-3 minutes. We'll be quick.
All right, we'll be back. Okay.
Are we all back?
I don't see Nikki's face yet. So, and
I'm
she's
just sending emails over here.
okay. So you're back, and I let's see. Marty, are you back? Okay, so let's wait a minute for Marty. I know Sean's back, and I see Amy and Frank.
Nope, looks like Marty's back.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. Last items, 6 and 7, 181 South High Street, demolition minor project review. Okay, we're going to read 6 and 7 together. So we'll deal with these as one. This application is a request for the demolition of a non-contributing single-family home to facilitate construction of a new single-family residence. This is also a request for the construction of approximately a 3,500 square foot single-family home on a 0.47 acre site zoned historic district, historic residential, and located northwest of the intersection of South High Street with Waterford Drive. Ms. Martin will be our presenter, and Nikki, whenever you're ready.
Great. Good evening. I know you've been waiting for this all night. We've come to our final case this evening. So this is 181 South High Street. As mentioned, this is a request for approval of demolition as well as for new construction. The site is located at the intersection of Waterford Drive and South High Street. In detail, the site is 0.47 acres in size and is presently developed with a single structure built in 1967. Vehicular access is provided along Waterford Drive, and a historic stone wall extends along the South High Street frontage. A bit of history regarding this application. The applicant's been before the board twice informally, most recently in October of 2020 with a design that, most recently in February of 2021 with a design that closely resembles the design before the board tonight. At the time, the board had expressed support for demolition, provided that the criteria in the code could be met, and were generally supportive of the mass, scale, and conceptual character provided for the home. So, surrounding context of the existing site, the site is located between the historic Carr Barn to the south and the historic Carr Homestead to the north, and across the street from 182 and 190 South High Street, which are both examples of new construction within historic Dublin. These are the existing conditions of the property, both from South High Street and from Waterford Drive. You'll note in the right-hand photo, there is an existing detached structure. That structure is proposed to be retained and modified as part of this application. And the access point, as shown, will be modified as well. So first, in consideration of demolition, there are two sets of requirements established in the code. One for contributing structures, as just reviewed as part of the previous application, and one for non-contributing structures. The Historic and Cultural Assessment designates this as a non-contributing structure due to its age, materials, and workmanship. The applicant is required to meet one of three criteria defined in the code. This applicant has selected criteria 3 and provided findings for the board's consideration as to how and why the existing structure detracts from the historic character of the immediate vicinity, specifically the historic Carr properties, as well as interferes with the purpose of historic Dublin to highlight historic structures and allow for sensitive redevelopment. With that, staff is recommending approval of the demolition tonight. The proposed site plan, which is under consideration this evening, is for development of the site with a approximately 3,500 square foot home. This home is centrally sited on the site, similar to the existing structure. However, you'll notice in the site plan that the access drive is shifted west. The applicant will need to continue to coordinate with the City of Dublin engineer on those design details. However, the city engineer is accepting of the general configuration depicted on the screen. You'll also notice that the new drive accesses a rear-loaded garage, which is sited along the north property line. The home and garage have significant setbacks from both the front and rear property lines, well in excess of the minimum code requirements. The garage is located 4 feet from the northern property line, which is the minimum side yard setback within the historic residential district. Staff is conditioning that the applicant work with their adjacent neighbor to the north to ensure that none of the mature trees on their property are impacted by the siting of the foundation closely adjacent to that property line. The total lot coverage proposed with this application is 29%, where 45% is permitted. And the total building coverage proposed is 17%, where 25% is permitted, complying with all regulations of the district. Staff is asking that the applicant update this site plan as part of their building permit submittal. As mentioned, the architectural character is highly similar to the character previously proposed. This is a side gable vernacular cottage with a front gable stone-clad projection and a low hip wraparound porch with roof. A double door entry with windows on either side is provided. You'll also notice here that in addition to the stone cladding, the dominant exterior material on the structure is a vertical board and batten siding. This is a synthetic wood material. It was not included in your staff report, although a waiver for approval of this material is requested this evening, and staff is recommending approval as this material has successfully been used in other projects, as well as a project previously approved tonight. The south elevation, which is the second street facing frontage, is Waterford Drive. This is the side profile of the building, which is predominantly clad in vertical board and batten siding. The historic preservation consultant is recommending, given the separation that's been provided between the attached garage and the home, that the materials further differentiate those two structures, and staff is carrying that recommendation forward, that the applicant work with us to select either a vertical clapboard siding or horizontal siding for the primary structure, as was previously shown at the informal review. The rear or west elevation of the home provides access to outdoor living space, as well as provides vehicular access to the rear-loaded garage. The north elevation is an interior facing elevation, which, similar to the south elevation, is primarily clad in the vertical board and batten siding and has evenly spaced 2/2 windows with a ganged 2/2 window in the gable end. Proposed massing and conceptual character has been provided for the board's consideration. The massing character, unlike the elevations, provides the context of the existing detached structure and the updates that will take place to that and how it relates to the proposed structure. Additionally, architectural details have been provided, including the built-up wood columns and window details, both in stone and siding. The applicant has selected a variety of exterior cladding materials. First, the applicant is proposing a quarry cut stone, as well as for the main body of the front of the home, as well as a cultured stone for the foundation. The color of the stone selected is a white bark color. A physical sample has not been provided, and staff is recommending that physical samples of all materials be provided and subject to the Architecture Review Board's approval. We have expressed reservations regarding the light color of the stone and the dark color palette of the cladding. The applicant is proposing the primary structure to be finished in a dark gray color with aluminum clad windows in black, a dimensional asphalt shingle roof in a pewter gray, as well as a standing seam metal roof in a dove gray are proposed. All trim is proposed to be pure white, as well as accents. With that, staff is recommending approval of the demolition, finding that the third criteria is met for the reasons outlined in the staff report. Staff is also recommending approval of a waiver to permit the LP engineered wood siding. And staff is recommending approval of a minor project review with 7 conditions. In coordination with the applicant team, staff is recommending a minor modification to condition 5, that the applicant be eligible to submit building permits prior to returning to the Architecture Review Board with their material and color palette, just to provide them that additional flexibility, but also to provide staff and the board assurance as to the coordination of materials. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I know the applicant team is here as well, and they've been waiting patiently all evening. So turn it over to them.
Does anybody have questions for Nikki before we move forward? Okay, I see heads shaking. All right, so Mr. Taylor, I saw you earlier, and I think the owners are here as well. So would you like to add anything to the presentation?
I will, but Tim and Debbie, I think, want to speak first.
Okay.
Yeah, we really don't have any comments other than thanks for staying up late tonight. We've been working a long time on the project. I think we're getting closer. We saw the report in detail, and nothing really jumped out of there that bothered Debbie and I, except for one thing, and I think that's the garage, and we can get into that. And it was suggested that it would be a different color and maybe lose some continuity between the main house, and we thought even, possibly create a look that maybe that garage was there originally and we built a house and attached it to it. So Rich will go into some detail on that as well. But other than that, the things that were in the report we think are small. We think we can work all this stuff out. So we're feeling pretty good about it.
Okay, Mr. Taylor?
Well, thanks again for letting us come back for this final review. You remember we met with you in February for a second informal. This project is the same house that we had before with a number of small changes, including a couple things that board members suggested. So I'm going to skip a lot of what I was going to say because it's late. So I'm going to go right to on the exterior. Some of the ARB members suggested that we put additional stone veneer at the front gable and along the sides of the central mass, which would appear more logical. We agree with that, and we've made those changes on this submission. So when you look at that, you'll see substantially more stone veneer on that. Just to quickly address something that I think was slightly misconstrued in the planning report, the stone that you've seen on there, we're not proposing both, we're proposing either. So the stone on the gable and the walls and the foundation would be either that flagstone, which is a thin set natural stone, or it would be the cultured stone that you see on there. So the changes that we made to the outside include removing the small, well, I talked about the stone, but removing the small hood over the windows on the front gable, which we did to simplify that elevation on there. The home's entirely within the existing setbacks. It's inside the development area. I've got a couple of comments on the planning report. On condition 1, I have engaged a surveyor to locate the trees in question. And I don't think we have an issue, but if we do, we'll coordinate with Nikki if we find that any of the trees are negatively affected by the proposed house location. Condition 4, which Tim mentioned about the siding, we disagree that the barn and the house should have different siding materials. We think that would create the kind of false historicism that we all dislike. This is a house of its own time with some references to the massing of the district. I don't want to pretend that this was a house and a barn that we connected. We have done that on other projects, but we don't think it's appropriate on this one. And I think that the massing and the location of the masses on this project creates the enough separation without going with 2 different materials on this. And then condition 7, I'm confirming for the staff that the spacer bar on the windows we've selected exists on the STL windows. So we're again excited about making this significant contribution to the character and ongoing history of the district. And I want to just make a shout out to Nikki. She's been fantastic through this whole process and extremely helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for either the applicants or Nikki? I'll lead off with one. I see heads shaking. Nikki, why does the staff, what's the concern with the color palette, the proposed color palette?
Do you mean the color or the combination of colors and materials?
It seemed like when it was brought up that the surfaces of the house would be a darker, potentially a darker gray, contrasted with the white and black. You said the staff has some reservations, and I just wanted to hear more about what those reservations were and why.
Yeah, so I think honestly, all of the reservations about the color palette stem from the stone selection, and staff has concerns that we've not been able to see the stone in person and, would have requested a sample if we had allowed ourselves a little more latitude in terms of the timeline. So the color of the stone proposed appears very light. So light that it potentially could be perceived as not appropriate to the kind of native context of historic Dublin. And when you combine that with a dark color cladding, something that is already a little light would potentially appear more light because the contrast is greater between the two. We are supportive of the black window frames because we think that there's actually a diminished contrast between the dark gray cladding and the black window frames, and they kind of work in unison. But in terms of the entire color palette working together, the I believe it's white birch stone is something that we're concerned about.
Well, thanks for clarification. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that here in a few moments. Board members, since there aren't a lot of questions, do you want to talk about, let's talk first about the, make sure how we feel about the demolition. We talked about that at the informal review. Let's talk about the demolition. Is anyone opposed to the demolition?
No, I think we hashed that out pretty well last time, as I recall.
Okay, so and it seems to meet the criteria in our code for demolition. So I think we're all comfortable with the demolition. Okay, then let's talk about should we bring up the list of recommendations the staff has? And maybe I'll start just to get the conversation going while we're waiting for that. I agree with the applicants. I personally do not like the idea of changing the material for the garage. Of the homes with large garages, this home, just by the way it's connected, already has the greatest amount of differentiation because of how low the connector is. So breaking the mass between the garage and the rest of the house is already accomplished by the way the connector's made. So I think that goal is already met. And some of our projects, I fear, with all the materials, become too busy. And I appreciate the continuity here, and yet there's still variety, and that's what I appreciate. And so I would not be supportive of the condition requesting a material change at the garage.
I agree with you, Gary.
Okay.
I'm okay. I like the board and batten. I like the look. Huh? Yeah.
Okay.
It's a personal preference.
Marty? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
No, I agree with you.
Okay. Nick, maybe we should see the list again, because I think there's a big qualifier in there regarding the materials. Because in that list, you're having the applicants come back to us, so we don't necessarily need to make final decisions on the material and color palette, right?
So that's what I'm proposing, that based on the information presented tonight, staff was not comfortable making a recommendation and therefore would like to continue to work with the applicant and then forward those to you for final approval.
Okay.
Can I speak for a second, Gary?
Sure.
Just to clarify what we're hoping for is to get approval of this evening so that we can proceed to get a building permit while we're hashing out the final material selections. And that way things can proceed before costs go up another 20%.
Okay, understood. Okay. Any other discussion of those conditions? Okay. The only other comment I'll make is I appreciate what the applicants are attempting to do with the color palette, because I think one of my concerns is too many of our structures are looking the same. And the ability to begin to have some differentiation, I think, can enrich the district and the streetscape. So, and I understand the reservation, and I think the staff's right about the potential contrast of something very white with something dark. So that needs to be addressed, but I do like the direction, personally, the color palette's going. So, okay, now this is all, but the demolition and the project has been grouped in one, is that right? So we don't have.
There should be two motions, one for demolition.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll need to make several motions this evening.
Okay.
Demolition being the first.
Yes, I should have read the agenda. Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve the demolition of a non-contributing structure?
I can make the motion for the demolition.
All right. Frank, thanks. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Was that Sean or Marty?
Marty.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have that, Judy?
Yes. Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The second one is our motion to approve the minor project with, I think we have now, we reduced the number of conditions to.
Yeah. And before we approve the minor project, there is one waiver that wasn't previously identified. So we would just request that that be approved, and I'll put that on the screen, and then we can move on.
So I'll make a motion to approve the waiver to allow the engineered wood.
I'll second. Or either one.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes. All right, now we need a motion to approve the minor project with, are we at 5 or 6? 6 conditions, okay. Okay, is there a motion to approve?
I can move that we approve the minor project with the 6 conditions stated.
Okay, Sean?
And I can second.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, it's been approved.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for staying so late tonight.
Thank you all very much. We're excited.
All right, we'll see you. We'll see you later at some point. Okay.
I hope
Thank
so.
you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Moving on. All right, communications, Nikki.
So the only communication that I'll provide is the one that I gave you a preview of earlier. In July, the city will be returning to in-person meetings with the expiration of the state legislature's opportunity to conduct public business virtually. Our first in-person public meeting will be held at 5200 Emerald Parkway. Presently, the Department of Development and occupies the interim council chambers prior to all of our boards and commissions moving to the new council chambers in August of 2021. So we'll continue to keep you posted on that, but just wanted to have that preview for you, and don't have anything else. Oh, wait, I do have one more thing.
It better not be
Monday-
training.
It's not training. It's not training. On Monday, City Council approved the historic design guidelines unanimously and with many accolades to the Architectural Review Board. So congratulations to all of you for your numerous years and meetings of hard work. And we will, those are effective immediately. Unlike the zoning code, they're adopted by resolution. And we will be finalizing that document and sending it to be printed. So once we have physical copies that have been professionally printed, we will distribute those. And then we had talked about this earlier, I believe, maybe even in 2020, regarding getting books from the Ohio Historic Society regarding architectural styles. I have reached out to them and am trying to secure those. They were out of print when I tried to get them previously, so I'll stay on top of that. But those are my only updates for this evening. Thank you.
Okay.
Our next meeting is virtual then on June 23rd.
That is correct.
Are we anticipating agenda items?
We are, yes. Yes, we will have a meeting and there will likely be a number of agenda items. I don't think it will be as full as this meeting. Lucky for us, right? But as of now, I believe we have at least 4 cases that are eligible. And we will be also providing a summary of your walking tour at that meeting.
Okay. All right.
Great.
All right. Thanks everybody for their patience. I'm sure there are many motions to adjourn. So.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's.
All right. We'll see you next month. All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.